It is playoff seeding galore, and the Houston Texans have one of the biggest opportunities to move around in the AFC playoff picture, and the Los Angeles Rams need to find some momentum. The Ultimate NFL pregame show starts right now.
It's the Ultimate NFL pregame show. Every team, every game, every angle. The local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network going head-to-head on every matchup. It's the Ultimate NFL pregame show. Unprecedented insight, unrivaled passion, and unsurpassed knowledge. It's the Ultimate NFL pregame show. The Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Week 18 in the NFL is here, and we've got everything you need to know heading into the weekend from the local experts across the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, now the #1 sports podcast network. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher, and from the primetime game for the Ravens and the Steelers that will define both of those teams' seasons, the big 4:25 and 4 o'clock window matchup between the Cardinals and the Rams, to why that Houston and Indianapolis game might have bigger implications than you might think. We're going to go game by game to make you the most informed fan for game day. So appreciate everybody for being here. Week 18, it's crazy. Final week of the regular season already. It's honestly pretty unbelievable. Today's episode of the Ultimate NFL pregame show is brought to you by FanDuel. Before tip-off, check the FanDuel app and see what's dropping during NBA Happy Hour every Friday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern. Let's start off with a couple of the Saturday games, those two big matchups. We'll start off with the Panthers and the Buccaneers. Lots of NFC South implications in this one for both sides. So James Yarko of Locked On Bucks and Julian Council of Locked On Panthers break it all down.
Wrapping things up here on a crossover Thursday, James Yarko of Locked On Bucks, Julian Council, Locked On Panthers. And here it is, where everybody thought that these two teams would be at the end of the season, battling it out in Week 18 for a chance to go to the postseason. Julian, what do the Panthers have to do to clinch the division and win this game?
Yeah, first and foremost, it comes down to turnovers. You mentioned it back in that game, back in Week 16. The lone turnover of the game was Baker Mayfield's interception, where he and Mike Evans weren't on the same page. You blame Mike. It doesn't matter. Turnover, that cost him. Lathan Ransom gets it, having a little bit of a redemption story after the week prior where he hit Tyler Shuck late, and that led to the Saints being in field goal position to win that game. So that's going to be a massive key. I look back to the game they just had on Sunday. Seattle's a team that has the second most turnovers in the league this season. They knew that a guy like Sam Darnold was going to give them one, and he gave them multiple. An interception, had a fumble. Honestly, should add an interception on the first play of the game for Seattle, and that would have changed the entire complexion of the game for Carolina. So they've got to get those takeaways. And when they got the takeaways last week, they got 3 points. When Seattle got their takeaways, the interception from Bryce, the strip of Chuba Hubbard, they turned those into touchdowns. And that's so important for Carolina to be able to take advantage of those turnovers if they get them, but also to hold on to the ball. I think back to 2022 in this game where it was for the NFC South Division title. Now, that was winner take all in that scenario. Carolina got up to 14-0 lead, but then they turned it over 3 times, and that's why they lost that day. So you cannot have those catastrophic turnovers that lead typically to 4 to 7 points for your opponent. And another thing, and this probably is the biggest thing outside of turnovers, is Bryce Young's got to rise to the occasion, man. You look back at that 3-week stretch he had against the Rams, against the Saints, and also against the Bucks in that game in week 16. If you look at EPA per dropback, that was the best 3-week stretch of his career. Look back at last week, he had a negative 0.54 EPA per dropback. That's the second worst of his career as a starter, behind what happened in week 2 a year ago against the Chargers. So he went from having his best stretch of his career to one of the worst games of his career on Sunday. That cannot happen again on Saturday. It could, I guess, if Atlanta wins on Sunday, but if you want to take care of it on your own, he's got to rise to the occasion. I felt like he was doing that. He was not the problem in Seattle. He was great against LA. He was good against Tampa as well. He was playing good ball until he wasn't against what was obviously and is one of the best defenses in the NFL, and certainly the best defense they're going to face all season long in Seattle. But this is why you drafted Bryce Young, for these kind of situations. I tell my listeners and viewers all the time, we can't use every single game as a referendum on Bryce Young. We can use this one as a referendum on Bryce Young, because this is the type of game that you give up DJ Moore, that you give up Christian McCaffrey, that you give up those first-round picks to get up there to take a guy who can help you not just win these games, but then win games next month, or yes, this month, later on, next weekend and beyond. Like, that's why you went out there and got Bryce Young. So if he lays an egg, turns the ball over, you got to ask real questions about whether this can be your guy moving forward. It's the first time he's been in this kind of situation as far as potentially winner take all. But man, it's huge for him. Like, that's what I'm looking at. So turnovers and really Bryce Young rising to the occasion. Those are the things that Carolina's got to take care of if they're going to win this game on Saturday and not really wait for Atlanta or New Orleans to dictate what's going to happen as far as who represents this awful division in the playoffs next weekend.
Yeah, I think Bryce laid an egg last week on purpose because they knew it was the Panthers' loss week. And they knew that Tampa fell on their alternating win weeks. So they're like, who cares? Let's put nothing on film that could potentially give Tampa even the slightest chance of winning this game. So, I mean, kudos to the big brain move of Bryce Young. For the Bucs, it's real simple. And I've said the same stuff in this segment of these crossovers all year long. You know, you take care of the football. You don't make stupid mistakes, things like that. It's real simple. Don't beat yourself. This team has made beating yourself artwork throughout the second half of this season. You have a defense that allows one small mistake to turn into an absolute avalanche of ineptitude. You have an offense that cannot seem to push the ball down the field, whether it's because they don't trust the protection for Baker, whether the players don't trust or agree with the play calling, whatever the case may be. You will sit down and watch this game if you are a Carolina Panthers fan, and you will see the Bucs take their opening possession right down the field and score, and you're going to think, oh God, here we go. Just wait for it. In the words of Barney Stinson, wait for it, because the Bucs will find a way to push themselves out of scoring range. They will make stupid mistakes along the offensive line. They will make stupid mistakes like offensive pass interference or an illegal blindside block or ineligible man downfield, and the offense will completely stall not just that drive, but the next two drives, because that has been the MO of this Todd Bowles-led team over the last 2 months. You allow a snowball to turn into an avalanche, and it completely derails the entire roster. So if you're the Bucs, be a goldfish. I just quoted Barney Stinson. Let's go Ted Lasso. Be a goldfish. You make a mistake, forget about it. All right? You have to move on to the next play and not allow that one mistake to dictate the rest of your game.
Yeah, and you go back to week 16 as a Panthers fan, and that's exactly how it played out. Opening drive of the game for Carolina, if Rico Dowdle didn't trip over his own 2 feet, that's a touchdown. Instead, you found yourself down 7-3 after Mike Evans was able to win against Mike Jackson. And I'm sure there were plenty of people in that building like, oh, man, here we go. Mike Evans is back. He's a known Carolina Panthers killer, and he's going to kill us again. And that was not the case. As you're right, that Bucs offense didn't really do anything, and the Panthers defense able to close out that game on that Sunday, and Bryce Young made enough plays. So we'll see, man. We'll see. I look at this, and I think Carolina should win this game. Well, mainly because the pattern tells you they're going to win this game, and that was the thing coming off of the loss against New Orleans. Well, hey, look at it. It's been win-loss since week 7, week 8 when they beat the Jets and they lost to the Bills and then came back that next week and beat the Packers, the first shocking win of the season. If that's the case, then, okay, they'll beat Tampa, they'll lose Seattle, and they'll beat Tampa again, and that's all it needed to do. So looking at the pattern, yeah, I guess I'll take Carolina in this game. And also just looking at the way these teams have been trending, this is a game the Panthers honestly should win. Tampa's just, they've lost 7 out of 8 of 10. They've been banged up. Baker is on the injury report of a right shoulder injury now, which is his throwing shoulder, for those who don't know, which you all should as Bucs and Panther fans, having him been your quarterback at a point in time the last couple of years. So that's another thing to look at. Carolina should win. They really should. It's just, we'll see, because if it's going to be a shootout, I have my concerns. I look on the defensive side of the ball. There's a lot of guys on that defense that have Super Bowl rings who have been in these spots before. The main 2 guys who haven't been are Derek Brown and JC. I'm not worried about Derek. JC, he could make a mistake. Offensively, you got outside the offensive line, which is obviously a big part of it. your pass catchers, they've never been in this spot. Your quarterback has never been in this spot. Your running back really have never been in this spot. So how do your skill position players come into this game? How do they handle the pressure, the environment? If Buck fans are still even fired up for this game, I don't know how they feel about it, because I think they're probably over it too. But they'll take a home playoff game, because why the hell not? But we'll see. Should hopefully be a fun one on Saturday. And Lord knows I really do not want to watch Falcons Saints on Sunday afternoon. So let's just get it over with.
Falcons and Saints fans don't even want to watch Falcons and Saints. And inexplicably, the Bucs are yet again favorites. They have not been underdogs since the Rams game. I don't know how.
Let me say this, because I looked on Sunday at FanDuel, and they still had Tampa favored. Like when they had it posted for the division, they still had Tampa favored. And I understood it from the fact that, like, okay, Tampa's at home and the whole Carolina Panthers of all, but the Panthers had more paths back then to the playoffs. And even look at it today, where in this game, they've taken off who's going to win the NFC South now, but who in this game, Tampa's favored. But I would think that if you had it posted as far as who's going to win the division, Carolina should be favored because they have two paths to the playoffs, while Tampa, their only path is winning this game. Like, that's the crazy thing when I look back at it. So, yeah, we'll see what happens, man.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one for sure.
Julian's over at Locked On Panthers. James is over at Locked On Bucks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Seahawks and 49ers, an incredible NFC West matchup, and you got a lot on the line here. So it is Brian Peacock of Locked On 49ers. It is Corbin Smith of Locked On Seahawks. They'll be breaking everything down from key storylines, key matchups, and so much more.
All right, here we go. Locked On 49ers, Locked On Seahawks. Brian Peacock here with Corbin Smith to break down this Week 18 matchup. When it comes down to 49ers offense against Seattle Seahawks defense, it's good on good. This is the matchup of the whole game. It might get decided the other way, which I want to talk about, because maybe the good on good just is a stalemate. But I think beyond all of the players on the field, we got to talk about Kyle Shanahan against Mike McDonald, because I think these are two very good coaches. They're younger guys, even though Kyle's been around. He's not that old of a guy yet. They're going to be around for a long time, and they are really good. And how those chess pieces are moved around is going to be a lot of fun in this matchup as well, Corbin.
It will be. But as you said, I don't know that this game is decided between those two guys, the side of the ball that they coach, because San Francisco, for the most part, is much healthier, other than we'll see with Trent Williams, but they at least have most of their key pieces on that side of the ball. Seattle, away from maybe missing Kobe Bryant this week, they're as healthy as they have been on the defensive side of the ball. And both Kyle Shanahan and Mike McDonald are coming off games where they clearly were in their bag. I mean, Carolina is the same team that put up 31 points in the Rams, and Seattle didn't even give up a 9-yard pass to them last week. So, and the run game was shut down, another game under 100 total yards. So both these coaches are coming off games where they were pulling a lot of the rabbits out of the hat, and they were making life really hard for the other team. And that means that the pressure, and maybe it's not pressure, but pressure is going to be on Sam Darnold, the Seahawks offense, and the 49ers defense, which I want to ask you about the secondary situation going into this game, because that might be the biggest injury situation, not Trent Williams, the secondary. The fact that Upton Stout is in concussion protocol, Renardo Green has been banged up. Like I'm just wondering, I mean, Seattle, Rashid Shaheed practiced on Wednesday. Now, it was limited, but still, it looks like he's trending to be available potentially on Saturday. If Seattle's got Shaheed, Smith and Jigba, Cooper Kupp against that secondary, and oh, by the way, the 49ers, they've still had their issues with this, getting after the quarterback. When Sam Darnold's had time to throw, he's been absolutely lethal downfield. Like, I'm looking at that corner versus receiver battle from a Seahawks perspective, and just wondering how many more injuries can San Francisco put up with back there in this game. And look, no offense to Chicago, but Seattle, I think Seattle's got the way they're running the football the last few weeks, and just I think their offensive line is a little bit better than what Chicago's is. I just am very curious to see how that plays on the back end, though, with the 49ers. And Upton Stout's been really good. If he can't play in this game, I think that's a significant loss for San Francisco.
Upton Stout's an interesting one, because I do think his backup, Chase Lucas, is a really good player, and I haven't seen that much of a drop-off going from Stout to Lucas. And earlier on in the year, the 49ers were running out of rookie nickel, and you know how teams like to find matchups in the slot. So he got tested a lot, and he got beat sometimes, but he was up to the challenge. And so it was really fun to watch a young rookie and sort of an undersized player come in and compete and earn that spot and really deserve his spot as a starter on the 49ers defense. And I'm not sure what his status yet is going to be for this game as we record this, but I think the 49ers will be okay with Chase Lucas. But here's the thing that fascinates me, talking about this this Seattle Seahawks offense, and I think Rashid Shaheed, we talked about it yesterday on our Locked On 49ers podcast, is he's kind of the X factor because he wasn't around in that first game. And he's obviously a dynamic playmaker. And so I'm glad you gave us the injury update on him, because in week one, the 49ers were kind of burnt by Jackson Smith and Jigba. He went for 9 catches, 124 yards. And it didn't hurt him. And so I wonder if it's that big of a deal if the 49ers get beat in the nickel and in the slot. It's like, you can get yours, but as long as everyone else doesn't get theirs, and we do hold the running game as they did in week one to 42 combined yards or whatever between Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker, I think the 49ers are okay with one guy getting theirs. The problem would be if Jackson Smith and Jigba goes for 124 and Rashid Shaheed has a big play or two here and there, and they're able to run the football. Now you have some big problems if you're the 49ers defense and you're playing against a much better defense on the other side where you can't go outscore them with 35 to 40 points. So that's what's interesting to me in this one is Jackson Smith and Jigba can get his, but everybody else can't also get theirs. Where's the spot? And if I'm not mistaken, is it right guard where the Seahawks have had some problems and they can be gotten? Now, can the 49ers get them there is the question.
Yeah, look, I've had some fans that have been giving me flack because they're like, you're the president of the Anthony Bradford fan club, but like, he's given up 1 sack in the last 8 games. Like, the issue is that when he has a bad play, it tends to go viral. Like, his bad plays are really bad. And so I think it makes it an exaggeration for how bad of a player that a lot of these fans think he is. But like, he also had a block on Sunday in Carolina that sprung Charbonnet for 29 yards, one-armed and outside a defensive end, one-armed him and knocked him to the ground. Like, he's incredibly powerful. But he has been the one that has been the most vulnerable to giving up some bad plays and giving up quick pressures. Gray Zabel's generally been really good this year. The last few games, he's given up some pressures, which we'll see what he does this week. But it's fascinating because I look at the tackle position. Both these teams are dealing with injuries. Charles Cross has sat out the last 2 weeks with a hamstring himself. Who knows if he can play Saturday or not? His backup, Josh Jones, has been excellent the last 2 weeks. He's a little banged up right now. Mike McDonald made it sound like he's going to be good to go, but like the idea that undrafted rookie Amari Kite might potentially play in this game, like that would be a matchup that San Francisco, especially with the injuries they've had off the edge. If the Seahawks have Josh Jones healthy or Charles Cross plays in this game, he's good to go. They've been running the football. This is not the same team that San Francisco played in week one from that standpoint. Their run game has been a bazillion times better the last few weeks. Walker and Charbonnet have interchanged 100-yard rushing games the last 2 weeks. And those two guys have really become that thunder and lightning package they hoped they were going to get. But the run blocking has been much more consistent in recent weeks. And looking at what Chicago could do testing those edges last week, that's what Seattle wants to do. They want to run that off tackle, the wide zone stuff. So if that tackle spot has a backup or another backup in there, that really could impact things. If Josh Jones is healthy, and with the injuries the 49ers have dealt with there and the lack of pass rush, and Chicago, the success they had testing the off tackle, you can bet your bottom dollar that Seattle is going to be coming out wanting to try to do that too.
The other injury report here is Renardo Green has been practicing to start the week. So he's looking good at corner on the outside for the 49ers to most likely come back and play for Darrell Luter there, who was his backup that started the last couple of games for the 49ers. So that said, we know who's going to be out there. We know the strengths. We know the weaknesses of these football teams. How do you see this one going on Saturday, Corbin?
I'm still trying to come up with a score prediction because I just feel like this is the way that I look at this. Is Seattle is going to be the more whole team coming into this game. They're obviously San Francisco's not getting Bosa or Warner back, and Brandon Ayuk's not driving 95 to get to the stadium to join the team. Like that,
104. Don't cut him short. 104 miles per hour.
So I guess Seattle is coming into this game. They've won 15 road games in the last 2 years under Mike McDonald. They're not going to be the least bit alarmed having to play somewhere else. They'll play anywhere and play good football. So I think a lot of people are going to look at Seattle and right now they're still 1.5 point favorites. I think that's fair. That's about the right number though, because I could see this coming down to a field goal late for either team, because I just think San Francisco, the job Kyle Shanahan has done and the way that offense is clicking, this is going to be a challenge for the Seahawks. As good as their defense is, they showed a couple weeks ago they can be got. Now, I don't think they're not going to let San Francisco do that again. I don't think they're going to allow 450 passing yards or anything like that. But San Francisco is going to be looking to get just enough big plays. I think that 1.5, I could see this being like a 1 point or 2 point game either way. And I'm still very torn on which one I'm going to go with because my mind changes every 15 seconds thinking about. It's just, that's how excited I am about this game.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. And I think both teams have that, physical, violent, we're going to run the ball mentality. And I think both defenses are going to try to do everything they can to stop that. And it's going to be put in the hands of the quarterbacks. And it's going to be Purdy against Darnold. And they're going to have to throw. And the Niners aren't going to put up 42 points, but I think there's going to be more points scored than there was the first time around. So it's not going to be 42-38. It's not going to be 17-13. Somewhere in between. I think it's kind of a pick 'em. I think it's interesting that the Niners were favored to start, and then the Seahawks are now favored. So there's at least some early money coming in on the Seahawks. I don't know what that matters. I don't care about the betting angle too much, but it's just interesting to see how that sort of thing works. But 24-20, 24-21, one of those, it's going to be a field goal game. By the way, Niners special teams suddenly is amazing. Where are the Seahawks special teams at? Because it might come down to that.
Seattle has been in the top 2 in DVOA for special teams pretty much all season. And so that might be the equalizer. San Francisco can play with them on special teams. And that's where Shaheed being healthy. First 3 games with 3-game span with the team had a kick and punt return for a touchdown. You can ask Sean McVay about that. Like that's been a huge part of Seattle's success. They've been very good
extra because Cooper Kupp's not a big play specialist. Just that extra dynamism on offense too. You don't have to make that many plays on offense, but if Rashid can get that one big play, all of a sudden there's a 45-yard play like that.
But it feels like Cooper Kupp. Like I've been saying this for a few weeks, but it feels like there's going to be a game where he is going to factor in more. And I'm wondering if this. I'm just throwing this out there. Okay. I'm wondering if this could be the game we see more Cooper Kupp, just because, especially if Stout's not playing. Chase Lucas is not a big guy. Like that could be the matchup that Cooper Kupp could have some success in. So we'll see. We'll see. I have never been more fired up as a reporter to cover a game than this one on Saturday night.
Check out Corbin over at Locked On Seahawks. Check out Brian over at Locked On 49ers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Let's dive into the Sunday games, 1 o'clock window, starting off with the Colts and the Texans. And the Texans have some opportunities to potentially move up or down in the seeding, depending on what happens here in the AFC playoff picture. Meanwhile, the Colts, they're eliminated from the postseason already after a very hot start. So you have Jake Arthur of Locked On Colts and John Hickman of Locked On Texans breaking everything down here for you.
Closing out this episode, this crossover show, Colts, Texans, it go down Sunday. In any world, how can the Colts play spoiler Jake? What's your game prediction?
Well, it's tough for Houston because they do have things to play for. They're in the playoffs, but like they want the division crown. I guess what the Colts can throw at them is Houston not really knowing what to expect from Riley Leonard. Now, Leonard is plenty mobile. Like if anyone who watched him at Notre Dame, that's how his bread was buttered. Like he's not like an elite athlete, but he will run the heck out of the ball. And I think the Colts will look to establish a bit of that. If they can break up the Texans D just a little bit with Taylor and Leonard as runners, and then kind of use play action off of that to hit some big plays like Alec Pierce. Maybe Josh Downs or Tyler Warren can get some yards after catch going. And then that's certainly possible. On the defensive side of the ball, that's where I have even more questions defensively. And that's with a team that is starting a rookie 6th-round quarterback. Who's going to stop Nico Collins? Who's going to stop Higgins? Dalton Schultz. Like, I just don't know who is going to be able to stop the Houston offense right now. Laiatu Latu does some really nice things. He's probably going to come up with at least a few pressures, maybe a sack. He's a sack and a half away from 10 on the year, so he'll be pretty motivated to be productive in this one, as always. The Colts' backup defensive tackles with DeForest Buckner gone have been pretty productive. Tommy Adebawore and Neville Gallimore. The linebackers are yikes in coverage. That could be a real advantage for Houston. The Colts really, really wanted to do everything possible to keep their linebackers from being in coverage by playing more dime defense and playing more man coverage on the corners and stuff. But the amount of injuries have just kind of relegated them to just trying to survive. And that's put the linebackers in bad positions quite a bit. I think Houston would just kind of have to have a bad day. I think the Colts pass rush would have to be really clicking. And then at some point, Houston just being like, let's get some of these backups in here. Let's stay fresh for the playoffs. I don't think just mano a mano, like man for man, that the Colts are going to just be able to beat this team. Not like this. The Houston's defense is really good. I feel like I was kind of raining on everyone's parade yesterday at the Colts facility. They announced Riley Leonard was the starter and kind of selling it as like a great opportunity, like a feel-good thing. And I was like, hey, guys, yeah, but this matchup, not great. Like throwing him in against Houston is pretty bad. They're the best defense in the league, and they're number 1 or top 5, top 10 in just about everything. So I do certainly think the Colts have a little ingredient there with Leonard and his mobility and willingness to push the ball down the field that could help. But I can't act like the Colts are a better team. Like, anything could happen on any given Sunday, but by design, the Texans should win.
And I think you make a great point. If Houston starts to decide to pull guys, what does that look like for the coach in terms of being able to make it a game if the top tier guys is not out there? Now, what I will say is Houston has some good depth up front. Not the best depth on the outside at corner. Not the best depth at safety. Decent depth at the linebacker position. We got your guy, former coach EJ Speed, who's played extremely well in his role this season, and I think he's a player that Houston should want to bring back. But if Houston's out there and they're playing a half of football with their starters, this game should get ugly early. And I'm not going to say could get early. It should. It really should. Houston defense should be able to get off the field, force 3 and outs. They are, I think, the best team, the best defense in the NFL at the amount of 3 and outs on the year. Houston's offense should be able to just score 14 to 17 points in the first half. And after that, you put in your reserves. And your reserves for Houston looks like Davis Mills. Your reserve for Houston looks like, even if you want to pull Woody Marks, who's had a good rookie season, but he's been banged up a lot throughout the year, Nick Chubb and Jawar Jordan, who's ran the ball very well. Your reserves for Houston looks like a Jaden Higgins who can make some plays, a Jalen Noel who can make some plays with opportunities. I think it would be important for Houston to get Cade Stover some opportunities and get him going a little bit more. So pulling Dalton Schultz and putting him out there. So Houston's reserves offensively, all of those guys have been a part of, in some way, shape, form, or fashion, that 8-game win streak. They all played major roles, including Davis Mills, who played some good football against Jacksonville to lead that comeback, and throughout the year until C.J. Stroud returned back. So I think this is a game where Houston should be able to drop 20 early in the game, and I mean between 17 to 20 points by the halftime, pull their guys, and the reserves are good enough to finish it out. And I'm going to take Houston in this game by 10.
Okay. Yeah, I can't come up with a specific score yet, but I mean, a 2-score deficit certainly sounds right. I'll give the Colts a little fight. I think if it was a quarterback we'd already seen out there, it would be easy for them to just kind of roll over a little bit. Not that they don't want to try hard, but we have seen them roll over in late year situations before. But I think having kind of a young, spry quarterback like Riley Leonard out there will give everybody enough energy and juice and like newness to want to compete really, really hard to the whistle. So a double score deficit is likely, but maybe we go like 17-28 Texans.
I think that's a good number.
And that's me kind of being kind to the Colts right now.
That's also me being kind to the Colts. Honestly, that's also me being kind to the Texans offense as well, because as great as this team is, everybody knows that the offense is what been kind of holding them back from being better.
Mm-hmm.
And so they've struggled at times. They got out to a quick 14 lead against the Chargers. We saw how that game ended offensively. They struggled against the Raiders. So Houston's offense can have issues. I think what plays into this, into Houston being able to score points is, number one, they've already played the Colts. Number two, like you mentioned, who's out there defensively. So for Houston, it should really be about not shooting yourself in the foot, because on the opposite side, it ain't going to be too many players that can stop their offense. That should be able to stop their offense. So we'll see. Those guys will be coached up well in Indy, of course. This is the NFL. Any given Sunday is a true thing. So we will see.
John's over at Locked On Texans, and Jake is over at Locked On Colts, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Packers and Vikings. The Packers, they have secured a playoff spot, but they've been reeling a little bit recently. Meanwhile, the Vikings, they're out of the playoff picture, but hope to hand their rivals a loss. So Luke Braun of Locked On Vikings and Peter Bukowski of Locked On Packers talk key storylines and so much more.
Moving on here with Crossover Thursday on the Locked On Podcast Network. Hey, thank you so much for making the Locked On Network the #1 sports podcasting network. And if you are an everyday, or if you listen to Locked On Vikings or Locked On Packers every single day, consider joining the Everydayer Club. You can go to lockedonvikings.supercast.com or lockedonpackers.supercast.com, as it were, and you can get that show ad-free, no interruptions, access to a special Discord server, and more. So, Peter, how do you think this game's going to play out? Like, final score, I don't think anybody cares. But what do you think the vibe is going to be? We like to play a game on the post-game shows. What are we going to be talking about tomorrow? What are we going to be talking about on Monday?
I think Packer fans will be talking about how they're going to replace Malik Willis. Because it cannot be overstated what he's been able to do and the development that he has shown. We were talking before we came on here about Sean Mannion and his prospects, Vikings legend Sean Mannion. Yeah. And I think he's a future head coach. I really do. And they think the world of him. They were shocked.
That's been the vibe since before he retired. Yeah.
Yep. And there was, they were shocked. Matt LaFleur said on the record, they were shocked. I think it was the Bears brought him in and they did not sign him as a coach. And the Packers were like, I can't believe they didn't do that. And he came to Green Bay and they did not let him leave the building. And so I think the Willis piece, I mean, look, you have Packers media, and I think this is, buffoonish, but asking Matt LaFleur, like, do you have to think about the Jordan Love versus Malik? And I'm just like, okay, we don't have to do that.
Oh, I will be really annoying about it though. And
listen, you are not alone. And a lot of other fan bases are happily trolling the Packers about this. And I'm just sort of like, okay, but
like, I want you to know, I know that it's not like that, but it's not going to stop me.
No, but look, and you are well within your rights. And the reason is, like, it would only be a funny troll if he were playing well. And he is. Like, that's the thing, is he really is playing at a high level. And they don't get to the playoffs. They don't win 11 games last year without Malik Willis. They won 2 games where he started. I know against bad teams, but like our Jeff Jagosinski, our guy on the squad show, our former Packers OC, he has a great phrase, and it's every Sunday you are eligible for an ass kicking. And we saw that on Saturday. Like the Packers got their ass kicked by a team with a backup quarterback. And so you go out there and you have to go play, even if it's Will Levis or Anthony Richardson that you're playing against. And they had great game plans. I mean, I don't know how many coaches in the NFL could get out of Malik Willis, what Matt LaFleur has gotten out of Malik Willis, which, this could all be fool's gold, right? Like he could go somewhere where he's not being coached by a coach like Matt LaFleur or Kevin O'Connell. Coincidentally, he could probably, there's probably at least 3 coaches in this division who could get this play out of Malik Willis. Maybe he'll find a team where that's the case. I hope he goes to a team that actually knows how to use him and gives him a chance, because he's a great guy. He works his butt off and he's super talented. And I think that's what we're going to be talking about from a Packers standpoint. And I hope it is a conversation about, hey, Matthew Golden looks really good. Like he made some plays in a game against, an actual NFL defense. I think that's going to be the conversation. And from a Viking standpoint, I'm sure the aspirational thing that you're going to be talking about is, all right, we feel good about JJ McCarthy moving forward, because if he plays bad against this defense, maybe the Packers show a bunch of stuff and send zero pressure at him and do that kind of stuff. I don't know if we'll see that. I don't know how much Jeff Hafley is going to use this as audition tape for that next head coaching job.
Yeah. This can kind of be sometimes these coaches want to put something out there. They'll call the trick play now just to get the other team thinking a little bit, going into the playoffs.
Just to show it.
Yeah.
And you go back to that 2023 playoff game against the Cowboys, every play seemingly was the play off the play. He was Matt LaFleur was like, Dan Quinn, I know you know all the base concepts. We're going to run the double move off the big over. It's going to be, a post.
This has been the entire Viking season, by the way. It's been a disaster. They tried to make the whole plane out of double moves. It doesn't work.
You can't make the whole plane out of double moves, but it can work in a one game situation. And so I think Matt will probably do some of that where he'll show some things just to show it. But again, it's Malik Willis playing quarterback, and he can do things with the run game, for example, that Jordan Love just can't. So, or that you just wouldn't call with Jordan Love, at least not at the volume that you would with Malik Willis. But for the Vikings, the whole thing is going to be, can you feel good about JJ McCarthy? And if you're the Packers, how much do you care about that? If you're Jeff Hafley, are you going, let's try and not hurt this guy, but let's try and hurt his confidence. Let's try and bruise the ego a little bit, because the last time these two teams played, he got his ass kicked. And I'm sure 9 is going to want something to say about that. But let's flip the question around. What do you think we're going to be talking about coming out of this game? What are you going to be on the squad show or the postcast talking about with this game?
Well, so obviously JJ McCarthy has a huge bit to do with it. If he plays or if he doesn't play, then it's a different conversation. That's going to be the topic for the next 8 months for me.
Yeah.
But with this game specifically, the Brian Flores dynamic is really interesting. So for those who don't know, Brian Flores' contract is up.
Yeah.
I was just reading about this. Expiring. And he was answering questions on the podium about it this morning. We're recording this on Tuesday. So he's being asked about that, and he's saying all the right things. I'm just going to let my agent handle that. What will probably happen is that the Vikings will get a contract done with Flores that's free to do. And if he goes and takes a head coaching job, there's offset language in that, and he'll probably make more as a head coach than the DC contract would be. So it's pretty easy probably to get that contract done, but then we do the head coaching interview sweat again.
They'd probably make him the highest paid DC in the league if he wanted.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah. And
I would very much like for him to be the Titans head coach next year. That would be great for me.
That's an option. Yeah. So so we'll be doing that sweat all playoffs. But what this game,
do they need to change the system, Luke?
No.
I mean the how you hire coaches.
Oh,
it's not as bad as college, where Lane Kiffin is leaving in the middle of we're going to go to the playoffs, and I'm the LSU coach or whatever.
Yeah, I think it's if you're a good coach on a Super Bowl team, and then you miss an opportunity because of that. I get that there's an unfairness to that, but I don't think any rules need to change about it. I think people can figure out their own logistics. But for this game with Flores, especially if it's a backup like Malik Willis, or especially Clayton Tune, right? This is kind of a chance for Flores to just stunt on a young quarterback, and just kind of say, here's what I can do. So I think Flores empties the clip. I think everything comes out in this one, and this is a little bit of an audition for Flores to say, here is everything that this can be. And so if this is this offensive meltdown and you're leaving the game I know it didn't matter, but you're on the post game going but I'm still kind of pissed about how that went because Flores just threw everything and Clayton Tune couldn't handle it or whatever. That's kind of the closing argument.
I can handle that one. Clayton Tune will not be able to handle it.
But even like Malik Willis, like if they find a way to like make Malik Willis look way worse and suddenly his free agency prospects don't look as good, like if that's what we're doing, then we're talking about, oh my God, how do you ever keep Brian Flores in this building?
Yeah.
And that's going to be the big topic of the next like month or so with the Vikings, because we've got all the time in the world to talk about JJ McCarthy, and that's not really going to be, there's nothing can happen until like March about that. So we've got all the time in the world to discuss what they should do there. But with Flores, that's the immediate thing. Is he going to go take one of these head coaching jobs? But one of the openings is the New York Giants. They're not too happy with him. One of them might be Miami. They're not too happy with him.
Yeah.
And like, so I doubt that he's going to those two, but what about the Titans? What about something like Arizona? Like, who knows, right? That's definitely a big topic with the Vikings, but this game could be a pretty strong closing argument for both Flores and McCarthy. I think both those guys have that kind of that at stake here.
Yeah, I mean, look, Packer fans would love for Brian Flores to no longer be a Minnesota Vikings coach. Like there's no two ways around that. It is a nightmare to prepare for him. It's a nightmare to prepare for this Vikings defense. And even when they don't have, a bunch of great players out there, they find a way, and they do have some really good players on that defense. And so, yeah, that would not be surprising to me at all. I don't know that there's anything the Packers can do about that, frankly. Like they can play well, and that would be one way to just like, okay, well, they handled Malik Willis. Like it would be a feather in Malik Willis's cap, right? If Brian Flores threw the kitchen sink at him and he was just like, I'm going to run away from Andrew Van Ginkel and I'm going to throw this ball to, whoever. Like, I think that could be where someone goes, should we just give him like the Justin Fields deal with inflation? Should it be 2 for 44 for him somewhere? Like, I think that's on the table for him. And so that these kind of dovetail nicely, right? Like the Brian Flores versus Malik Willis, they both have a lot to gain, I think, in this game.
Yeah. And that's how it goes with these, even the meaningless games between, teams that are eliminated. You'll have guys who are going to be free agents, coaches that are trying to make a case.
Your resume is the tape, always.
Maybe the Packers could tank this one, though. Just let Brian Flores look really, really cool and then call up the Titans and be like, hey.
I mean, that maybe that's the move. Maybe, hey, just like start Clayton Tune, let Brian Flores' defense just suffocate him, and then let the Titans say, hey, Brian, here's the we'll give you, we got a bar on Broadway, we'll rename after you, and it'll be great. It'll be great.
There it is. Perfect. The script is written.
Peter's over at Locked On Packers, Luke's over at Locked On Vikings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Coming up, we'll continue to dive into the 1 p.m. slate of games for Week 18 on the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show. Nobody knows your money goals better than you. Robinhood puts you in control of your money with tools that work as hard as you do. Locking in on every opening, beating your PR, beating it again. Channel that drive into your money. Robinhood puts you in control of your money. Trade stocks and ETFs, options, futures, and crypto all on one platform. You can now build and execute your own trades from a desktop with Robinhood Legends advanced tools, or take advantage of the new Robinhood strategies with a tailored portfolio managed by a team of experts. You expect more from yourself. Expect more from your money. Get started today at Robinhood.com/yourmoney. Again, that's Robinhood.com/yourmoney. Your money, your move. Moving along on the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show, Kevin Oestreicher still here with you, breaking down all of Week 18's NFL action on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks so much for being here. It's been a great year of Ultimate NFL Pregame shows, and of course, we're going to have some in the playoffs still, but just looking back on where this regular season is taking us to get to this point, it's certainly been a wild ride. And let's continue. They'll start off with the Browns and the Bengals. Nothing to play for these two AFC North teams. Neither of them are making the postseason, but you still got to play the game. So Spencer German of Locked On Browns and James Rapine of Locked On Bengals talk about what these teams can take into maybe future seasons with this game.
All right, Spencer, real quick on Shedeur Sanders. How realistic do you think it is that he's their starting quarterback week 1 next season?
It's a great question. I don't know if we want to do this in like percentages necessarily, but what I would say is this. I think right now, especially given what last week's win over the Steelers does like for the draft order, for where the Browns kind of fall in the draft order at this point. Right now, they'd pick 6th. They can't go any lower or higher, depending on how you look at it, than 7th. And they could get as high as 2 if everybody in front of them, except, the Raiders, it doesn't matter. They can't catch the Raiders. But if everybody in front of them wins this weekend, then they would move up they could still be the number 2 pick and still be in position to draft a quarterback. But because of where they are, I'm guessing they probably end up in the top 5, but not in position to maybe get a quarterback. And unless they trade up. And so understanding that, like, it does feel like right now, plan A is probably all right. Well, there's a lot that kind of goes into this too, because if they do clean house and it's GM and coach are gone, that all bets are off then. I think then like a new staff's going to come in and they're going to decide if they think Shedeur Sanders is worth a damn or not, and more than likely they'd probably decide we're going to do our own thing. So that's maybe the kicker here. But if it's at least one person from this regime is still here, if Andrew Berry is still here on Monday, I think that plan A probably is, let's roll it. Let's roll Shedeur Sanders out there and at least have him be in an open competition for the job. I think it's probably him in an open competition against, I don't know, a Mac Jones. Deshaun Watson still is probably going to be here on the roster. Maybe they try that for another time.
Please.
Or they at least make it a thing for a third time. We'll see. But to me, that feels like probably what they end up doing, because I just don't know if it's going to be in their purview to want to trade up and try to get one of the quarterbacks in this class, unless they fall in love with one. That's what has to be determined during the pre-draft process, of course. But I think right now I'm inclined to believe, as long as somebody from this current regime is still here, that Shedeur Sanders will still be here with a chance to compete for the starting job.
Shedeur Sanders for Kyler Murray. Who says no? Don't answer it. That is free content for you to dive into later. Look, this Bengals team, they're trying to win 3 straight. And first things first, you got to stop Myles Garrett and slow him down. I think he's going to get the sack record. I've kind of already let my mind go there and allow that to happen. So anytime that gets brought up, I'm trying to prepare Locked On Bengals listeners and viewers for that. Anytime it gets brought up, it's going to show Myles sacking Joe Burrow. If they somehow don't let that happen, good on them. But it's just a tough ask to do. Obviously, this Bengals team, they're going to play their offense. They're going to try to win this game. There's not going to be questions of, were you more worried about Myles Garrett's sack record than them trying to win? No, they're going to go out there and try to win. And I know Joe Burrow feels that way. Obviously, Zach Taylor feels that way. So they're going to have to slow down Myles Garrett. And then it's get these weapons in space like they have. Jamar Chase continues to have a great year, over 1,300 yards, had 2 touchdowns last week. T. Higgins for a second straight year. He's just the 3rd Bengals receiver in team history, joining Carl Pickens and A.J. Green to have double-digit touchdowns in back-to-back years. If Jamar had 3 touchdowns Sunday, he would join him. I'm not sure that's realistic against the Browns. But you never know. Not with Jamar Chase, you never know. So this offense, they're going to have to put up points early, get off to a quick start, try to get a lead. I think that's big. And then defensively, be opportunistic. Don't let Shedeur Sanders get into a groove like he did against the Titans, where he's had his best game, his most productive game. And you also don't want him to be, 17 of 23, I get it. It 2 of those were interceptions, but that's pretty efficient. And if he's efficient like that's going to go a long way, especially with the Bengals tackling issues that they've had.
Yeah, listen, I think you're right, where everything sort of starts up front and with the Bengals' ability to contain or limit Myles Garrett's ability to impact this game, because we know the Bengals are going to want to throw the football, of course. I think on that defensive side of the ball, though, too, for the Browns, how do they best limit the damage from Jamar Chase and T. Higgins in this game? Because both those guys are phenomenal receivers. We know that. And, we talked about this being the first time Shedeur Sanders gets to face the Bengals. This is also the Bengals' first time facing Tyson Campbell opposite of Denzel Ward. And I actually think like that duo has become really, really stout. Like there's been teams that have said, we're not going to throw Denzel's way. We're going to go to the opposite side. And they've even had a tough time throwing against him. So do the Browns kind of finally have this duo of corners that can maybe slow down both these guys and make their lives a little bit harder? I'm curious to see that for sure. But on the offensive side of things, this Browns offense has to be able to do what they did last week, which is play from a place of leverage against the Bengals and actually put up some points. If you fall behind early against this Bengals team, if it's like 14-0, I just don't know how you did. I shouldn't say I don't know how, because yes, the Bengals off defense could always give up some chunk plays late and you could always get back into this thing. But playing from behind is not just something this team really can handle or do. They have to be able to have some success. Like if they get the ball early or take the ball early, score on that opening drive, put the Bengals in a spot where they have to throw the football, and then Miles can sort of pin his ears back and make some plays. So, like when you're going up against an offense that can put up points the way the Bengals can, you need your offense to kind of come through and be able to kind of answer that bell. And we'll see what that kind of looks like. But sustaining drives and playing from a place of being ahead, I think could be key in this one for sure for the Cleveland Browns. By the way, you brought up Burrow being on the sack record highlight. I kind of wonder, like, if Burrow, not that he's cool with it, but I think Burrow's like, he's such a different cat. Like, I wonder if he ends up being the guy on the highlight, if he's just kind of like, it's just, because he's gotten sacked by Myles Garrett so times and there's so much respect there. I almost wonder if he would just.
He would just say good play. Like, I don't think it's going to bother him. I think it will bother fans.
Because like
Josh
Allen a couple weeks ago was like, I don't want to be in other people's highlights, so no. But I could see Burrow just being like, I'm going to get sacked by Myles Garrett. I've been sacked by him before. I'm going to get sacked by him again. It's fine.
He was his 100th sack last year, right?
That's true.
So it's just, it's wild how it works. But yeah, I mean, if Miles just wants to stay in Cincinnati, there's no problem after Sunday's game. There's no problem with that. That's probably some more interesting
free content
for you, Spencer. Yeah, you're welcome. You are welcome.
James is over at Locked On Bengals. Spencer's over at Locked On Browns, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Saints and Falcons up next again. No playoffs for either of these teams, but you see Tyler Shuck playing great football. And for the Falcons, they're trying to look towards the future as well. So Ross Jackson of Locked On Saints and Aaron Freeman of Locked On Falcons have you covered with everything you need to know.
Wrapping up today's Crossover Thursday presented by PrizePicks, Aaron Freeman of Locked On Falcons, Ross Jackson of Locked On Saints. Ross, let's talk keys to victory. What is one thing that the Saints need to do in order to walk away from a win this Sunday?
Yeah, look, I'll say this. I think that there are a lot of things that they're going to have to do to get a win. But I think maybe the thing that's going to be most important, I think Kellen Moore needs to flip the script a little bit. This is a little bit different than what we talked about before. But I've been thinking about it. I think he needs to flip the script. I think back to, look, before he was the Saints head coach, right? He was a Super Bowl winning offensive coordinator with the Philadelphia Eagles. How did he win that Super Bowl? He won that Super Bowl by changing everything that was the Philadelphia Eagles. He turned Jalen Hurts into a downfield passer, a downfield threat. It was one of his best downfield games of the season. And so the Saints have now made a brand, and that's after the Eagles made a brand of themselves through Saquon Barkley and through Jalen Hurts as a rusher. Jalen Hurts had the fewest passing attempts in 2024. And so I think this week, Kellen Moore has an opportunity to try to flip the script a little bit. And they are a team that has now, on offense, New Orleans, made their bread and butter by attacking deep. If they're not able to do that because of, like we just talked about, those great safeties, and then, I didn't want to leave A.J. Terrell out of the conversation as well, outstanding corner. I think being able to flip the script on its head a little bit and win with the run game in a way that we haven't seen the Saints do, but they might have figured something out in the second half against Tennessee with Audric Estime. If they're able to do that, I think that could be the Saints version of what the Falcons did to the Saints the first time that they met, and their ability to be able to kind of catch the Falcons sleeping a little bit by rebranding what they're doing and how they're doing it and how they're executing it over on the offensive side. I really think that, look, strong defense, all this other stuff, playing into the fourth quarter, all that's obvious, right? There's the typical keys to victory, but I think maybe challenging and breaking tendencies in this game. You have nothing to hide going into the playoffs, right? This is a perfect time to kind of turn the tables a little bit and be something that you haven't shown that you can be so far this year.
Yeah, I think that's a great point there. And we'll see if they can maybe break some tendencies there and as you say, catch the Falcons sleeping a little bit in this matchup. Now, for me, when I look at this game, as you mentioned, there are lots of things that can help either one of these teams win the game. But to me, the one thing that kind of stands out to me is the Falcons have to kind of break even in the third quarter, right? The Saints are one of the worst first quarter teams, but they're one of the best fourth quarter teams. So you kind of expect the Falcons get off to a fast start. You kind of expect the Saints to finish this game strong. And the Falcons have really struggled in the third quarter this year. They're one of the worst teams in the NFL in third quarter. I think they're like 29th in point differential. It just feels like every single game, every single week, they get off to a reasonable first half performance, and then it all falls apart in the third quarter. And so I'm not expecting the Falcons to win the third quarter. I expect the Falcons just to break even. Don't lose it in a disastrous way where you're getting outscored by like 3 scores in the third quarter. Just like break even. If it can be like a 7-7 sort of third quarter, I think if the Falcons get off to a fast start and with how the Saints will finish in all likelihood scoring a bunch of points in the fourth quarter, that should be enough to sort of allow the Falcons to walk away with a win and hold on for dear life in the second half, where this team typically has not performed well. So just break even in the third quarter and they should be fine.
That's really good. Yeah, the Saints only have I think it's a +2 point margin in the third quarter. It's really all about the fourth quarter for them. You're absolutely right. The Saints have struggled in scripted situations early, the first 15 plays in each half. Typically haven't really amounted to much for them. That changed a little bit last week with the second half, but is that the new norm, or was that just the exception? It feels like it was just the exception. And Tyler Shuck right now leads the NFL in most fourth quarter passing yards amongst quarterbacks with at least 6 starts. And so per game, excuse me. And so I think you're absolutely right. That has to be a big part of what this game is for both these teams, is who shows up best in the second half and, sets themselves up for success by the time that the game is done. That's going to be a really fun piece to watch. It'd be interesting. Like, who wins the third quarter potentially wins this game. That'll be a very interesting early indicator.
Yeah, definitely. Now, a last little tidbit. Special teams is going to matter in this game because both of these teams have terrible special teams. And so it's just like you're just going to be slightly less terrible than the other team's special teams in order to win this game. Right now, I think the Falcons are 30th in DVOA on special teams. According to FT and Fantasy, the Saints are 31st. So the Falcons are going to fire their special teams coordinator regardless of what happens with Raheem Morris at the end of the season. But this is just like at least one opportunity for him to get a very little W if he can just slightly be less bad as the Saints special teams.
Set himself up for his next job. Like, hey, but I finished strong. I think you're absolutely right. The Saints have one of the worst punters in the NFL. And look, they made a change at kicker. They're better off at kicker now than they were the last time that these two teams met, exchanging Blake Grupe for the Irishman and Charlie Smith, who 27 months ago was an English school teacher in Ireland, and now all of a sudden is an NFL kicker. And he has been outstanding for New Orleans so far. And so, if it's going to be the difference between, a 2-point game, a 3-point game or anything, I feel better for the Saints now in this situation with this kicker than I did in their previous matchup. But, it's always so unpredictable, man. You just never know. Know, especially with the special teams game.
Ross, is there anything you want to share with the listeners before we duck out of here?
Just massive appreciation for the continued support. It's Saints and Falcons hate week, but it's not Locked On Falcons and Locked On Saints hate week. Aaron and I always talk about that. We very much enjoy each other. We very much enjoy getting to do these shows, and we're very grateful for being able to kick off a new year together with all of you. I'm sure I'm speaking for you now, but definitely a sentiment I wanted to share.
Well, Ross, I'm sorry to break it to you that I have to break it to. I hate doing. No, I'm kidding. Yes.
You've always been the worst, Ross.
I despise you. I am hopeful that this is the last time I ever have to watch Cam Jordan, Taysom Hill, and Demario Davis play against the Atlanta Falcons. I'm waiting for Mike Evans and Levante David to retire. These guys have been, thorn in my side for many, many years, watching them wreck the Falcons over these last decade or so. So hopefully, we'll get these guys out the paint and end it in a negative way where they go outside. I don't know.
I think those two defensive guys at least will be back, but we'll see.
We'll see. We'll see.
Ross is over at Locked On Saints. Aaron's over at Locked On Falcons, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Cowboys and Giants. This is a game where, again, two NFC East teams not going to make the postseason. Certainly disappointing for both of them as they look towards the future. Marcus Mosher of Locked On Cowboys and Patricia Traina of Locked On Giants talk about what these teams can look ahead for as the season comes to an end and the offseason begins after this week.
All right, everybody. Welcome back to Crossover Thursday, Locked On Giants, Locked On Cowboys. I'm Patricia Traina of Locked On Giants. He is Marcus Mosher of Locked On Cowboys. And for those of you who are everydayers, you listen to the Locked On Giants podcast every day or the Locked On Cowboys podcast every day, we have a brand new club called the Everydayer Club. You'll want to check it out. There's a lot of great perks For the Locked On Giants crew, you can choose from 2 levels of access. Cowboys, I think do you have 2 levels of access too?
Yep,
You've got 2. Okay, so a lot of great stuff. You can text with us. You can get exclusives that you won't find anywhere else. I mean, we have a Discord channel, which is great. We've got we're building up our NFC East trash talk area of that pod. Of that,
we just can't trash talk right now, you and I, but we'll get there eventually.
Yes, exactly. But it's going to be interesting come next year when we will all be able to trash talk. So if you want information on that, you'll want to hit lockedonpodcast.com, and at the top it'll say Everydayer. So the full URL is lockedonpodcast.com/everydayerclub, and just scroll down till you find the appropriate club that you want to join. So we hope you will check that out. All right, in this segment, keys to victory. I know a lot of people again are like, who cares? Just lose, go home, get this, at least from the Giants perspective, I guess from the Cowboys perspective. But Marcus, what is the key to victory for the Cowboys?
I almost feel like we should do this backwards. Like I'll do the key to victories for the Giants since we're waiting for the other team. But for the Cowboys, it's honestly just stay healthy. That's not a key to victory, but what you don't want to have happen is to suffer a big injury in week 18 that's going to affect 2026. And the Cowboys had several of them last year that kind of had a dark cloud over them, whether it was Dak Prescott's hamstring injury, DeMarvion Overshown's knee injury, Trayvon Diggs' knee injury, and it just put their whole season kind of on pause. So you want to stay healthy. You also just want to play some good football to end the year. Make tackles, don't fumble the ball, don't have a bunch of penalties. You want to leave the season having a kind of a good taste in your mouth, even if you lose. And then the last thing for the Cowboys is I just want to see somebody on defense step up and make a play. They've gone a couple weeks without turnovers. We talked about the lack of pass rush. Maybe someone like Donovan Ezeraku can create some pressures, turn those into sacks. If you can create some turnovers in this game, I think you're going to win. But I think the most important thing is staying healthy. You're not going to win a Super Bowl this year, but you can actually lose one next year if you have some big injuries. We don't want to see that happen.
Ditto for the Giants, but I'm also going to add a couple of things for those who are holding out hope that the Giants win this game, because again, it is the Cowboys, and next to a win over the Philadelphia Eagles, there's probably no satisfying win for Giant fans than a win over the Cowboys. The Giants got to stop hurting themselves with penalties. Now, last week against Raiders, they had a couple of false starts that blew up a drive. You can't have that. You cannot have that. They got away with it last week, but all season long, they've had that situation where pre-snap penalties have come back to bite them, mistakes like drops. You got to play as clean of a game as possible. This is the last game of the season. Future jobs are on the line. Like you said, free agent contracts are on the line. Play a clean game. The Giants, very rarely this year have played a clean game in those areas. And that's where it's got to start, I think, number one. Number two, in terms of beating the Cowboys, like I said, get that pass rush, which has been kind of, I'll say a little bit more than lukewarm. I won't say they've been red hot, but they've been active. Get after Dak Prescott. Don't give him any time to hit his receivers down the field if assuming Dak plays, which I think he's going to. And just, be aggressive. Let it all hang out. I mean, you've got nothing to lose. You're going home after this year or after this game. Just put it all out there on the field. Don't leave anything to, behind.
Well, I was going to say, Patricia, we've seen in the last couple of weeks Brian Schottenheimer be more aggressive on like fourth down. Because why not? Like it's not going to hurt you to punt the ball or to go for it on fourth down and not get it. We don't want to see a bunch of punts in this game. So it's probably not going to be very good football. At least make it exciting. Be aggressive. Try some things out because there's nothing to lose here.
Exactly. The only thing to lose is your job from the Giants' perspective, when the new coach comes in and looks at the tape and says, what was that? So I expect the Giants and Cowboys to really go at it because they always do. It doesn't matter what the records are. The two teams, they don't like each other. They're division rivals. There's a sense of pride for the Cowboys every time they whoop up on the Giants, especially at MetLife Stadium. And by the way, I'm going to be curious to see how the stadium crowd looks. Is it going to be mostly Cowboy fans or Giant fans, or is it just going to be empty?
I was going to say, will there be fans there? I think that's the part of it. One more thing, Patricia. We know that MetLife Field is notorious for being like one of the worst fields in the NFL. I wonder if that will factor into some of the decisions here. Like, I get wanting to start Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb, but why expose them on a field that has had a bunch of big injuries? Why not? It's just, I can't understand the reward versus the risk here.
Well, again, it depends on how badly they want to beat the Giants. You know, they have a chance to sweep them again. You know, that first game was very close, and the Giants, you know, they're coming out to play. I mean, Mike Kafka is not sitting anybody down unless they can't play because of medical reasons. So, you know, I could see a situation. Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, I could see a situation where the Giants just beat up on the Cowboys, which I know will not make a lot of fans who are hoping for that number 1 draft pick happy. But the Giant players, they've said it. They made it very clear. Mike Kafka has made it very clear. We don't care about that. We care about winning. So that's what it's going to boil down to for these two teams as they close out a disappointing 2025 season for each of them. So, Marcus, I mean, what can I say, my friend? It's been an interesting year. Always good to see you on these crossover shows. And hopefully next year when we do these, we'll be talking about playoffs. Wouldn't that be nice?
I just hope that we have some renewed optimism about our franchises when we talk in September, October. The Cowboys and Giants usually play pretty early in the season. Wouldn't be shocked if we're playing in week 1 again. Can't wait to talk to you again.
Yeah, definitely. All right, folks, that's going to do it for this edition of Crossover Thursday, Locked On Cowboys, Locked On Giants. Do make sure you check out our respective shows. We're going to continue to bring you shows 5 days a week because even though our seasons end on Sunday, going to be a lot to talk about.
Marcus is over at Locked On Cowboys. Patricia's over at Locked On Giants, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Actually, one of the big matchups, the Titans and Jaguars matchup, could have huge implications for that Houston game because if the Jaguars lose and Houston wins, there's going to be some flip-flopping that might go on in the standings. So be sure you check out Locked On Titans and Locked On Jaguars for all the info on that matchup. Coming up, we're going to be diving into the 4 o'clock slate of games because there are a lot of games to dive into there. Stay tuned. Plenty coming up on the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show. First, the show is brought to you by FanDuel. Fridays already feel different during basketball season, and FanDuel's making them even better. Every Friday night before the games tip off, FanDuel gives fans a new way to kick off the weekend with NBA Happy Hour. NBA Happy Hour is your official pregame and limited time window where special offers drop right inside the FanDuel app before the action starts. Fridays from 6 to 7:30 Eastern to become appointment viewing with NBA Happy Hour. Opening the FanDuel app during Happy Hour always brings something new. Boosts, bonuses, and surprises. And it's easy to check the weekly special before tip-off and make a move before the window closes. And for the Denver Nuggets, I'm a big Denver Nuggets guy. There are a lot of injuries there right now. So I'm always looking on FanDuel to see, especially during Happy Hour, if there's anything with Denver, because I think they're really, really underrated right now. So before tip-off, check the FanDuel app and see what's dropping during NBA Happy Hour every Friday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern. A little basketball, a little action, and a whole lot of Friday energy. That's NBA Happy Hour only on FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Moving along on the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show, Kevin Oestreicher still rocking out with you here. Diving into everything with Week 18, last week of the regular season, and moving on to the 4 o'clock slate of games, the Cardinals and the Rams. The Rams need some momentum here. You know, they've really been reeling, and I think for them, just winning a game would go a long way, even if they decide to, you know, rest guys after the first half or not play some guys at all, be cautious with injuries. They need to see a win. They need to see one go through, right? So Alex Clancy of Locked On Cardinals and Doug McCain of Locked On Rams, get ready for game time.
And welcome back to this crossover edition of Locked On Rams and Locked On Cardinals. And here in our third segment, I'm not going to ask you for a pick or a score prediction. I know that's why your listeners and your viewers probably tune into the Friday episode. You get paid the big bucks for that. Not even ready to throw out a score prediction because we don't even really know exactly what the stipulation is going to be on this game. Right. But as far as path to victory, I look at guys like Christian McBride. I look like guys like Jacoby Brissett. I look at as you point out in the last segment, if this Cardinals offense can play free and easy, play spoiler, put up some points against this Rams defense, and then the Rams are actually playing for something, actually playing for the 5 seed, they're playing with all the pressure, and the Cardinals are just playing to play spoiler. I think that feels like it's the path to victory for Arizona.
Yeah, it's got to be the Carolina Panthers model. It's got to be long, broken play touchdowns like the swing pass. I think it was to Chuba Hubbard for 50. So there's that. And then Matthew Stafford throwing a pick 6. I think he threw a pick 6 in that game. I can't remember. But I know that there were large chunk turnover and scoring plays on offense by Carolina that kept that game close. And I think it was in the 30s. That's how the Cardinals need to win. Big plays, broken plays, things like that, and turning the ball over and scoring a defensive touchdown, turning the ball over inside the red zone, things like that leads directly to a score. That's how this game stays close. If the Cardinals are going to try and, hey, we're going to run the ball on first down. Hey, they're going to run the ball on second down, on 2nd and 5, 3rd and 3, incomplete, punt. Like, this is going to be ugly. This is about saving face for the Arizona Cardinals above all else. And they're going to do everything, I would assume, in their ability to do so, even though that sounds very fairy tale-y.
Yeah, I think if on the Rams end, the interesting thing could be, too, on top of, if the Seattle Seahawks do the Rams a favor and beat the 49ers in the NFC West championship game on Saturday night, which should be on Sunday night, instead they're giving us the Steelers versus the Ravens, but it's a whole other story. The fact that if that was the case, right, if that was on Sunday night, the Rams would just be playing all their guys for most of the game. Right. And Sean McVay has already stated that he is going to be playing his guys because of the quality of football that they've been delivering of late. So the question would be, if the 49ers do win and the Rams have essentially nothing to play for and they're locked into that 6 seed, and you really see Matthew Stafford out there, how many series is that going to really be for? How many series will Puka Nacua actually play? Because I know that it was a little bit of an emotional press conference for Sean McVay. He was noticeably irritated. He's like, you got to be key and critical. We got to go out there. But it wasn't the same, like, oh, okay, like I'm level-headed. I mean what I say, Sean McVay. So I could see by the time Sunday rolls around, if they do have nothing to play for, that maybe you get a series or 2 series from Matthew Stafford and Puka Nacua and a lot of these starters.
Do you think that – because, that's tricky. Because even if they are locked in, I mean, that means you go off a bad loss on the road on prime time, and then win-loss indifference. The majority of those guys don't play that week. I mean, the last thing you want is a full-blown bye week before you go on the road to play Philly or Chicago. So I know that he doesn't play anybody in the preseason. I know all that stuff. I know he's made it fun and sexy to not do that. But would you above all else, do you want to see Stafford out there at least the first half?
It's tricky for sure, and they definitely need to find a rhythm. I mean, at this point, if you look at the way the narrative has shifted on Drake May, and he threw 5 touchdowns against the Jets, even though he threw for less than 200 yards against the Bills, and it's quickly gone into his favor. It's not like he's padding his resume for an MVP at that point. I think the other thing too would be for me is if guys like Devontae Adams, Quentin Lake, Alec Jackson, Kevin Dotson aren't playing, it's like you're not playing with your full team that you're going to see in the playoffs the next couple of weeks anyway. And if Matthew Stafford takes 1 shot to that back, season's over. If Puka Nacua's shoulder gets a concussion, season's over. I mean, I think at that point you have to veer on the side of caution. I do trust this Rams team too. They are a team that likes to play with their food for sure. There's no doubt about it. But when the lights are bright and there's things to play for, you're on national TV, and there's kind of, I think, this us against the world mentality where a lot of people have jumped off the bandwagon. I still trust this Rams team against most teams in the NFL. And I think that even the teams where they might not be favored against right now, like the Eagles, it feels like that's a 4th quarter game. And in the playoffs, I would never call it a crapshoot, right? But in the playoffs, I mean, what more could you ask for? But it's definitely, I don't think there's a right answer. I think only Sean McVay knows. I think in a perfect world for me would be this, Alex. It would be that the 5 seed is on the table. And because of that, they have to play a full 4 quarters to get that. And they do it with some turnovers, getting pressure, getting home. And look, I mean, who knows? I mean, we've seen wild stuff in the NFL. The Cardinals might just roll out of bed and say, hey, let's do this today and let's make a game out of this one. And then the Rams win, hopefully by double digits, but you're feeling good. You got the 5 seed. And you're just winning a football game. I mean, that Seahawks loss, I wake up at 3:30 in the morning in a cold sweat staring at the fan. I'm just like, that's the worst loss I could think of in the regular season. And I've seen every Rams game since they come back from LA. So it's that just to get over that loss with any win against any team, I think is going to be meaningful. It's just to have a happy flight to wherever they're going, to feel good in that locker room, right?
Yeah, I know. And it's the Cardinals, and it sucks that this is like, I'm not even joking. This isn't even a green ribbon thing. It's like, don't embarrass yourself. And that's not challenging them to do that so they can be laughed at. Like, I don't make a mockery of any of this. I don't think this has been a terrible year win-loss. It's been a terrible year between the lines. But if the Cardinals can save face, that'll be enough. And I know it's defeatist mentality, but yeah, the Cardinals have been defeated, and they pretty much were since week 10. So I just don't want anybody to get hurt. I would love to see Trey McBride not play. Of course he's going to play. He's an absolute demon child. Love to see Michael Wilson get to 1,000 yards receiving, which is something nobody expected because he wasn't getting the opportunity. So it's a different plight for the Cardinals than it is for the Rams on Sunday, and that's fine. It's fine. It sucks, and it's fine.
Yeah, and honestly, just as a football fan, as an NFL fan, got to ask you about Kyler Murray. I mean, I really do. Yeah. I find that pretty fascinating. It's kind of a unmovable contract. I mean, not in the best position to draft a quarterback. I mean, so Justin Fields starting quarterback for the Cardinals? I don't know. I mean, what are your thoughts? I mean, what are your initial thoughts on just the offseason of Kyler Murray and what that's going to look like?
It's going to be fascinating. I think there's definitely going to be a market. I don't understand why people think there isn't. Look at how bad the quarterbacks are around the NFL, and Kyler Murray is not a bad quarterback. Nobody said that. I've been on Team Kyler Murray since week 5 of this season. And then I saw Jacoby Brissett play in Indy with this offense. I'm like, oh my God. What? Downfield throws, long touchdowns. What is this? What have we been missing here watching this team? Now, that's not fair necessarily. Kyler has a different skill set. They ran a different playbook, but I think there are 3 teams at least who have picks who could potentially offer a first rounder for. Like, the Jets have 39 picks and the Browns have 39 picks over the next 2 years. Not really. I mean, they've got multiple first each of the next 2 seasons. So even if it's a second this year and a first in 2027, or a third this year and a first in 2027, I think the Cardinals should jump at it. The Raiders are another interesting team. Like, if they want to flip Max Crosby for Kyler Murray and a pick, like, you can have a conversation there. The problem is, Dougie, this quarterback class stinks. I'm sorry. Francisco Mendoza.
You don't want Ty Simpson?
And the Dylan Moore kid, they're just not. They're just not. So the Cardinals, like, so many outlets in Phoenix, like, yeah, just trade up. Oh, give a future whatever and move up to get a quarterback. Stop. Just because they're quarterbacks that need to be taken, it would benefit the Cardinals to stay and get potentially the number 1 overall pick at 5.
No, I'm with you. There's no one. I mean, I've done so many episodes on Arch Manning trying to make that a thing, and of course, he's not only going back; he just doesn't look
Fernando
like
Mendoza, not Francisco. Sorry, I don't know what.
Fernando Mendoza, the Heisman winner out of Indiana, of course. We're the flipping Big Ten champs, right? I mean, look, I think he's kind of looking at it too. I mean, it doesn't look like the Murray contract. I mean, a post
not bad.
A post June 1st, you can save like $42.5 million. I mean, the dead cap, but you look where it's at.
It's like 15 mil difference.
Yeah, exactly. 13. I mean, geez. But is there a part of you that kind of like what? Because it feels like classic change of scenery. He still has a lot of talent. He's still young enough, and like you said, the quality of quarterbacks around the league. I mean, name 20 quarterbacks better than Kyler Murray when he's at his best, type thing, right? But is there a party that kind of wants to like run it back, knowing that this team wasn't a healthy team for the most part of the season?
Not with the same OC and probably not with the same head coach. Like, if you're, because that's a line in the sand that he's going to play this year. Why would you get rid of him? You may as well restructure and extend him. Like, this isn't, Jacoby Brissett is plenty enough to be a bridge guy. Kyler Murray's not a bridge guy. Kyler Murray's a starter, or he's going to play baseball. Like, there's not something where he's going to be an Andy Dalton or Joe Flacco or even a Tyrod Taylor where he's going to back up and start. He's going to start or he's not going to play football, in my opinion. So I just don't think it's too clunky. The only reason you're actually thinking about bringing Jonathan Gannon back is for a year is because there isn't a quarterback to draft this year. If there was, see ya, everybody. And then you bring in a new head coach, you bring in new coordinators, and you draft your dude.
I like that. You mentioned the Raiders. Hey, when the Las Vegas Athletics go there, he was drafted by the Athletics.
Perfect.
You go Deion Sanders on him, baby. Two-way, same city. I love it. But, hey, definitely definitely going to be an interesting storyline, not just for the Cardinals, but for the entire NFL. So, hey, we still got some games to play. Rams still got to run at the Super Bowl to take care of.
Speak for yourself. Speak for yourself.
Speak for
you. Have some
Hey,
games
man.
to play. We've got Cardinals have one game to play.
It's like in colleges they're like they chant SEC early in the Pac-12 was back the pack. Are you a guy that's going to be like back the NFC West? Is that going to be you, Alex?
No.
You
I
hate
don't give
everybody.
a rip about your team at all. Nor the 49ers, nor the Seahawks, all of which have at least 11 wins. I'm good.
No one respects hating more than myself or Travis. I set my alarm clock extra early so I have more timer on the day to be a hater.
Doug's over at Locked On Rams. Alex is over at Locked On Cardinals, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Chargers and Broncos. The Broncos playing for the number 1 seed, and it appears that they will likely get it as the Chargers. It's a lot of resting as we see across week 18. A lot of guys are going to rest, and I think the Chargers is looking that way for them. So you have Sarah Benninger of Locked On Broncos and Daniel Wade of Locked On Chargers talking keys to victory and so much more.
Keys to victory for week 18, where two teams have a lot of different things at stake in this game. The Chargers auditioning a number of players, the Broncos fighting for the number 1 seed. And of course, there's a lot else going on around the AFC. And we're excited to break it down for you here today on Crossover Thursday. Once again, just want to say thank you to all the everydayers out there that make us your first listen of the day every single day. Daniel, I'm interested for your perspective on this, and we'll talk about the AFC as a whole, but it's been a crazy year, hasn't it? I mean, it's been just like we went into the season thinking like, all right, there's these tiers, right, of teams right now. There's the Bills, the Chiefs, the Ravens, and everybody else in the AFC just kind of fighting, as like little brothers. It feels good to not be that at this stage of the season, but at the same time, like I want your perspective. Like this weekend, different vibe. The following weekend, though, I don't think necessarily we're going to get a chance. Maybe, you never know what could happen.
Yeah,
but I don't necessarily think we're going to do a crossover next week. What's the vibe for the Chargers? Like, what's the key for the Chargers right now? Not just in week 18, but going forward.
Yeah, I think the vibe is weird because the Chargers have surpassed expectations from the standpoint of, what many thought this season would be for them once they lost Joe Alt and Rashawn Slater. And at the same time, the vibe is also, man, what a terrible year to lose Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt, because I just think that we would be looking at a completely different conversation if the Chargers had those guys healthy. And it's hard not to feel like you missed an opportunity here in what is a pretty wide open AFC, right? I don't think there's any prohibitive favorite. I think every team kind of has their flaws and is, hot or maybe cooling off a little bit. But I do think for the Chargers, man, if you did have your guys, obviously, in your, Pro Bowl / all pro level tackles, this could be your year, right? Or maybe you are thought of in a different light. Maybe you are thought of as a Super Bowl threat, like a legitimate Super Bowl contender, because I don't know if they're in that conversation right now for me, which is the funny thing, because it's like there's a part of it that's like, hey, it's kind of house money because no one thought you should be here. They had such a tougher schedule this year, and they're in the playoffs with basically 2 weeks left, right? Which is a foreign kind of feeling for them. And you're not necessarily expected to win, and no one really expected you to get there anyway, so who cares? At the same time, the narrative around Justin Herbert with or without his tackles continues if you don't find a way to get a playoff win. And I know, obviously, as the host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, I'm not going to be excited for that narrative surrounding them if they're not able to win and not able to get that monkey off of Justin Herbert's back, because it's just I watch him every week, so I know how good he is, right? But that doesn't matter. If you go in and go to 0-3 in the playoffs, nobody's going to, remember that you didn't have your tackles, and nobody really expected you to get there. It's just going to be 0-3 in the playoffs.
Yeah, it's similar with Josh Allen. He's won 7 playoff games, and all anybody ever talks about is how you can't get past Patrick Mahomes, right? It's
right. The goalposts keep moving no matter what, even if you get the win.
That's 100% accurate. What you just described too reminded me, I had to look it up to make sure I was right, but the 2013 Broncos, I mean, they came in obviously that year with tons of expectations, and then you lose Ryan Clady, who was playing at the best football that he's ever been playing at that time. You lose him for the season, and then in the middle of that year, then you lose Von Miller after he had just an MVP caliber season the year before. So you lose 2 guys, and it's like, all right, now it's up to your quarterback to make up for everything and everybody else.
Yeah.
So I think that Broncos country can kind of empathize in that way a little bit. But you're right. I mean, it is getting that monkey off the back. And Justin, I mean, he's out there. I've been calling it the Chubbs Peterson hand because he looks like he's got the Chubbs Peterson hand from Happy Gilmore. But he's out there doing whatever the heck that he has to do to will his team to victory. So I think we can all admire that, even if, it's behind enemy lines there. But yeah, I think in this game in particular, what are we looking at here in terms of keys to victory? I know we break this down every single week, crossover Thursday. If the Chargers are going to win this game, what do you think has to happen? Because I think from the Broncos perspective, it's really just about don't make mistakes, number one. And number two, force the Chargers to make a lot of mistakes. That's something the Broncos have not done this year, Daniel, is force other teams to make mistakes. 8 games without forcing a turnover this season for, like you said, it could be one of the best, if not the best defense in the league. They've got 8 games where they've got 0 turnovers, 0 takeaways. That's the theme for this team this season, I think, is the offense having a slim margin for error. Even as good as the defense has been, they're not getting those extra possessions that most other top tier teams are getting.
Right. Yeah, that's such a good point. And the Chargers are kind of on the flip side of that, where, because I think the good thing for Broncos fans with that specific conversation is, you're a really good defense when you're a really good defense, even without the takeaways, right? Because you look at teams like the Chicago Bears or some of these other teams, even the Chargers to a certain extent, who rely so heavily on the takeaways, right, to be an elite team, that it's like that can be a little bit more fluky, like takeaways are not something that is always repeatable week in and week out, as the Broncos fans know. But I think for the Chargers, it was a fun keys to victory this week because it's just such a different game from their perspective. But I think it's pretty simple as far as the rookies have to shine. Like, this is such a showcase for those guys like Trey Harris, 2nd round pick, or Keandre Lambert-Smith, who's stuck behind Ladd McConkey and Keenan Allen and Quentin Johnston. He'll get a bunch of run in this game too, and get to show themselves against a former, the last year's defensive player of the year and an elite Denver secondary. I think the second thing, run the ball 40 times. Like, that is the only kind of vision I have in my head where the Chargers could be able to pull this game off, is where they just turn it into a total slugfest. Last week, they had 7 offensive linemen on the field at one point. Maybe they just really try to muck it up out there. Just run a wing T offense, right? I want 60 or 70 rushing yards out of Trey Lance, too, in this one. And my last thing is just, make it weird. There's no clean way the Chargers win this game, right? Like, that, in my mind, at least. You're not going to be able to win unless something weird happens. Like, I'm talking a punt or kickoff return touchdown. Somebody gets a pick 6 or a wild scoop and score. Maybe you try to redo that hook and ladder you tried the other week against the Chiefs. But I don't think there's a clean way for the Chargers to win this one. I think it has to be kind of chaos. So if they are going to win, I think they have to make it a weird game.
Yeah, I think that's a great point and well said as well. Just in terms of what you're looking for out of that, all the young players on this team to come in and do just whatever they can to possibly, like you said, make it weird. I think that's a great way to put it. I think from the Broncos end of things, there's a couple guys you want to get going. I think offensively, though, it's a broken record of wanting to get Evan Ingram going a little bit more. We've seen in spurts this season, he can be great. I want to see it on a consistent basis. Sean Payton joked too, because Adam Troutman, I don't know if you know this, he's 5 catches away from an incentive, and he's like, that's what he gets for an entire season. So it's probably not going to happen on Sunday, but looking forward to RJ Harvey, the rookie running back. He's got 12 total touchdowns this year, and he's been so dynamic for this team. And I think if the Broncos are going to go deep in the playoffs, he's going to have to continue to grow and evolve in his game. So can he have a big game on the ground as well? That's going to be fun to see in this one. But Broncos country, Chargers fans, we're excited. And I think both teams, both franchises, fan bases, very expectant for what is to come. I mean, optimism is brimming this time of year. Of course, the stakes are high, but Broncos fans, I think we're believing that this is going to be a victory on Sunday. We'll see what happens, of course, in the postseason. However, for both of these teams, the AFC West, man, they're being run by the Denver Broncos and the Los Angeles Chargers these days.
Daniel's over at Locked On Chargers, and Sarah's over at Locked On Broncos, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Jets and Bills. The Bills still could move up or down on the wild card standings in the AFC playoff picture. The Jets, well, they're looking forward towards the future. A lot of eyes on Josh Allen's status as well. So Joe Marino of Locked On Bills and John Butchko of Locked On Jets talk about the AFC East.
All right, John Butchko, let's have some fun here. We're going to pick
we're going to do a draft is what we're going to do. And so I'm going to build a team. John's going to build a team. We're going to pick a quarterback, running back, 2 receivers, a flex player offensively, can be whatever you want, a tight end, an offensive line unit, a defensive line unit, a linebacker unit, secondary unit. And we'll see where this goes, see who gets picked, see who doesn't get picked. And I think as I'm kind of the host today as the home team, John, your honors to go first.
All right. Well, I'm going to pick Josh Allen to start. So I'm going to rob you of the chance to have Josh Allen. For once, I'm going to have Josh Allen on my team. And Joe, I was thinking about getting really cute with this and playing the whole angle, Drake May, 6 to 7 years younger on a rookie contract. But it's best to not overthink this. Josh Allen right now, I think, is the best quarterback in the NFL. I think if you put a decent roster around him, you have a chance to to go to the Super Bowl. As we discussed a little bit earlier, it applies to the Patriots. It also applies to Drake May. I think he will stay at the top of the league. If I had to guess, I think he would, but it's a question of will he fall back a little bit next year? There have been quarterbacks who have had a big year 2 who maybe peaked then and then regressed a little bit going forward, even if they remain quality starting quarterbacks. It's a question, is really going forward. I think Drake May is going to still be elite. I know Josh Allen will still be elite. So I have Josh Allen at number 1 overall.
Figured you were going to do that. I was ready. I was ready for that to be the case. Now there's strategy involved with this because now you're not going to pick another quarterback. So I can just wait and get Drake May later on. So we're not going to do that right now. I'm going to go to a position group that I think is really deficient across this division. And I got to get Garrett Wilson. I got to get Garrett Wilson, wide receiver from the Jets. Filling out these receiver cores is going to be challenging. And I know this year, obviously not for Garrett Wilson ideal with the new system and the quarterbacks. He's a good football player. And there's a reason they didn't trade him. I'm happy to get him as my wide receiver 1.
All right. Well, with that in mind, I'm going to go grab Jalen Waddle then to make sure I'm not locked out of the wide receiver room because, that's really, it really becomes slim pickings after Jalen Waddle because I don't want to, if I'm building a team, I don't want Stephon Diggs and I don't want Tyreek Hill. So Waddle's really the only premium receiver left. So I'm going to take him with my second pick.
Yeah, I think that's a smart move by you because I was picking Jalen Waddle next if you did not. So now I have the chance to go first at a position, and I'm going to go with James Cook at running back. I think there's some other good players here in Devon Achane and Travion Henderson, but I think the diversity of James Cook with his ability to run so many different schemes, the big play potential, it's all there. I think James is he's probably going to win the rushing title this year, and he stands out to me as a running back I got to have.
All right, I'm going to pick Devon Achane. I don't want to say this in a way that's disrespectful to Breece Hall, but I think in a lot of ways, I view Achane as the player Jets fans wish Breece Hall was. And I think Breece Hall's a really good player. But again, I had my eye on 2 backs. It was James Cook or Devon Achane. I wanted to make sure I got one of the 2. So with you picking James Cook, I'm going to grab Achane right now.
That's strong choice there. I was thinking about him as a flex player, excuse me, for my team. I'm going to go to the offensive line here. I'm going to get the Bills' offensive line. I feel like they stand out in this group. I know the Jets have a lot of really good young players there. I would think a lot about the Jets, but I have a very established group with the Bills. Really good tackle tandem, really good center. We're going to go ahead and secure the Bills' O-line.
I was about to take the Bills' offensive line, so good pick, I think. I'm going to go with New England's offensive line. This is going to get me a lot of hate from the Jets fan base because we Jets fans, we love our bookend tackles, Olu Fashanu and Armand Membu. But I don't think the line's completely built yet. I think you have some questions on the interior going forward. You still have a really talented young guy in Campbell in New England's offensive line. I've always been a big fan of Michael Wenu. He was a guy I wanted the Jets to sign when he was a free agent. Also, Morgan Moses, who's just a rock solid guy at the right tackle spot. Jets fans really respect him. He had 2 stints with the Jets. It's tough to fault the Jets for letting him go because I think Morgan Moses' timeline as a player doesn't really align with the Jets' timeline as trying to build a winning team. And they also drafted Membu in the first round. But of the 2, and again, Jets fans are going to be mad at me for this, I'm going New England's offensive line.
Yeah, not a bad choice. I'm going to go ahead and get a tight end. I'm going to go with Dalton Kincaid. I've already have more Bills than I thought I would because I thought I was going to go Jalen Waddle with my second pick. We're going to go Dalton Kincaid. Obviously, injuries have been the issue there, but my goodness, when he's on the field, he's really special. The Bills' splits with and without Kincaid this year are pretty significant, and the skill set as a pass catcher is really dynamic. So we're going to go ahead and get that piece to add to James Cook and Garrett Wilson as part of our weapons.
All right, well, I'll match you tight end for tight end because I pretty much, it was a toss-up for me between Kincaid and Hunter Henry. And the real difference here, as I said earlier that, I almost went Drake May because he's young, but I felt like Josh Allen had so much over May that I couldn't justify May. For me, the difference between Kincaid and Henry really was age. I leaned towards Kincaid just because he's a little bit younger, but I think Hunter Henry has developed into a really solid all-around tight end. So he's my next pick.
All right. I was thinking about adding him for a 12 personnel in my flex, but that's no longer on the board. I think I'm going to go Khalil Shakir with my next pick. I need another receiver here. Really dynamic yards after catch player. I think there's a lot more to his game than maybe the Bills give him a chance to do. Some more down the field, middle of the field type work, but I think he's one of the best yards after catch players in the league. There's a toughness component. He blocks. We'll add him to be our wide receiver too.
Am I only allowed one quarterback? Because I feel like we're at the point where you're getting a little too cute by not picking Drake May. So maybe
I would say that you're.
Am I allowed to grab him as my backup right now?
You're missing an opportunity. If I pick a tight end, you should not pick a tight end. When I picked a running back, you should have waited on the running back. I would say that was maybe a strategy.
But you could pick them as the flex. So
I could. You're right.
So, I could. I'm going to go to the New England secondary. I really think they have a lot of good pieces there. Christian Gonzalez, Carlton Davis. I like their safeties. I think that of the defensive units in this division, that's probably my favorite. So I'm going to start building my defense out.
All right. I'm going to get a linebacker core. I'm going to go with the Dolphins linebackers. I think Jordan Brooks is the best linebacker in the division. They not a whole lot else besides him. They have Willie Gay and Tyrell Dotson, but I think it's about that singular piece for me, and I want Jordan Brooks, so we're going to go ahead and snag him to he's the face of the linebacker situation. I thought about the Jets. I still like Sherwood and Quincy Williams, but I think Jordan Brooks is one of the best linebackers in the league, so I want to go ahead and get him.
All right, I'm going to take Breece Hall as my flex. And, when everything I said about H.N., that's not a knock on Breece Hall. I think Breece Hall is, if he's used correctly, if he's your third or fourth option on offense and you use him as a guy who gets the ball in space and you use him to try and produce explosive plays, he's a guy who could be really dynamic. I think the Jets have misused him this year. They've kind of viewed him as a volume runner between the tackles rather than a guy you try and get outside and a guy you utilize in the passing game. But I'm going to hire a better offensive coordinator than the Jets have, and we're going to get more out of him.
I like that a lot, especially with H.N. as your running back. You could put Hall as your running back and H.N. as your flex. Have a lot of versatility there. So I love that. Okay. I have a chance to pick the first defensive line. I'm stuck between the Bills or the Patriots when it comes to D-line. If they're healthy, you get Milton Williams if you're the Patriots. But you also get Ed Oliver if you're the Bills. I think I'm going to go with the Bills defensive line. Rousseau, Ed Oliver, Daquan Jones, Joey Bosa, some young players in TJ Sanders and Deion Walker. I think they have a little bit more depth where maybe the high end of Barmore, Williams is nice. I like the depth that I get with the Bills D-line.
The only other option then for me is to take the Patriots defensive line. I mean, I think on paper you can make a case for the Jets. Will McDonald had 10.5 sacks last year, 8 sacks this season. Jermaine Johnson went to a Pro Bowl 2 years ago. Defensive tackles, Harrison Phillips has been a solid player for a long time. Jawan Briggs is developing, but the Jets have not gotten great play out of the two defensive ends this year. McDonald has 8 sacks, but 6 of the 8 sacks came in 2 games. There have been a lot of games where he's just disappeared. He has 7 games with either 0 or 1 tackles. And Jermaine Johnson hasn't looked the same player off the Achilles injury. So I'm going New England's defensive line. I think you mentioned the rationale for them. So that'll be my pick on the D-line.
Want to give me a flex player here offensively? We're going to go TreVeyon Henderson from the New England Patriots, a speed running back. We got James Cook and TreVeyon Henderson. One of those is going to play a little bit in the slot. I'll tell you that. So a little pony backfield here situation with what we're building in Henderson and Cook. And I think Henderson's got a good chance to be is there an all rookie team? If there is, I think he's got a good chance to be the running back.
All right, I'm going to go Jets linebackers. It's not been a great year for the Jets linebackers, so this is more reputation. Quincy Williams has had a really rough year. I think part of it might be just being in the new system. I think part of it might be just everything that's going wrong around him on the Jets defense. But Quincy Williams does have a first-team All-Pro nod 2 years ago. Jamie Sherwood's had kind of a disappointing year off a new contract, but I think of late his play has gotten better. He's been really solid against the run. So I think that's where I'm going linebacker.
I'll take the Bills secondary. You get Christian Benford, who's a stud. Cole Bishop's a good-looking young safety. Max Harrison is a first-round pick that, since he's been healthy, has come in and played really well. Some younger pieces as well, but that's kind of what you're pointing to. And I think Benford's one of the best corners in the league, and I love the potential of Harrison. So that'll be our choice here for secondary, with you already picking the Patriots.
I think I only have a receiver spot to fill, and this becomes tough because, again, I'm not picking Stephon Diggs and I'm not picking Tyreek Hill. So I guess I'm going to go Kayshon Boutte, who, a young guy. He's got 6 touchdowns this year. Maybe there's a little bit meat off the bone in terms of development. I don't love my options here, but I have to pick a second receiver, and so that's where I'm going.
All right, and of course I take Drake May to be my quarterback. So
Mr. Irrelevant.
Mr. Irrelevant. Yeah, you're the NFL MVP, right? All right, so I'll give you the 2 rosters that were built in the YouTube channels. Let us know which one you like better. John Butchko has assembled this: quarterback Josh Allen, running back Devon Achane, wide receiver Jalen Waddle, wide receiver Kayshon Boutte, flex player Breece Hall, tight end Hunter Henry, Patriots offensive line, Patriots defensive line, Jets linebackers, and Patriots secondary. I have Drake May at quarterback, James Cook at running back, Garrett Wilson at receiver, Khalil Shakira's another receiver, flex player Travion Henderson, tight end Dalton Kincaid, Bills O-line, Bills D-line, Dolphins linebackers, and Bills secondary. Well, John, this was fun. And I know that this will be an interesting game that will ultimately be played in Week 18. And the next time the Jets come to Buffalo, it'll be in a new stadium. So that'll be interesting for our next crossover discussion.
John's over at Locked On Jets. Joe's over at Locked On Bills, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Coming up, we have a lot more to get into with the 4 o'clock window, as well as that big Sunday night battle for all the marbles in the AFC North. Stay tuned. A lot coming up on the show. Continuing on in the Ultimate NFL pregame show, Kevin Oestreicher still here. Week 18. We're diving into it all. We did the 1 o'clock slate of games. We're in the middle of the 4 o'clock slate of games here, and then we'll talk about that big Sunday night battle with Baltimore and Pittsburgh. But let's continue on that 4 o'clock train here, and we're going to talk with the Dolphins and the Patriots here next. Is Patriots, there's still technically a chance they could get the 1 seed if they win and the Broncos lose, but it seems like that's a pretty out of the realm possibility. But hey, 2 seed for New England, that's looking pretty good for them. And so they'll play the Dolphins here, who are looking towards the future. Nick Cattles of Locked On Patriots, Kyle Krabs of Locked On Dolphins, talk keys to victory, and so much more.
So I think Kyle would agree with me on this, that this is going to be maybe a funky game on Sunday to try to figure out, because there's just a lot of unknowns. And hopefully all of you picked that up in the first 2 segments. We've got the injury unknowns. We've got the playing time unknowns, incentives. We've got maybe a lame duck head coach in Miami trying to keep his job. A lot of unknowns. But Kyle, I got to ask you, as we do every week on the crossover, your 3 keys to victory, my man.
Yeah, this is kind of feels like a college bowl game and not one of the playoff one, right? So it's like, who knows? Like, who knows who's getting off the bus and who's not, right?
Yep.
I think for Miami, avoiding putting your defense on short fields, where that has been when the games against Cincinnati and Pittsburgh got away from you, especially the Cincinnati game in Week 16. They're competitive. They're within 3 points at halftime, and then they have turnover on downs, turnover, bad field goal or bad kick coverage that leads to 5 consecutive drives for the Bengals that started on the plus side of their own 40-yard line. And they went right through. I would use the analogy that Nick Saban once said, but this is a family-friendly program. I think.
One of my favorite analogies of all time, by the way.
So they went through it like a tin horn, right? Straight down on the Dolphins defense. It's usually snowballed. If the offense is herky-jerky, or if they shoot themselves in a foot in the second half, things usually compound and snowball and get away from the Dolphins. And a lot of their negative game scripts that they've played this season has been because the defense has breaks trying to make a play, and they feel like they're backed up against the wall with the offense not doing their part, and then they're trying to make plays and they're on short fields. So I think that for me is one. And then inversely, if you can get down the Patriots measure excellent in a lot of metrics. They don't measure well in red zone defense.
Yes.
And you get in the red zone, like get in the red zone and make those opportunities count. Teams have done it with New England all season long. Now they only have 38 or 37 trips to the red zone all season long. So it's not like teams get down there a ton. Can you get down there 3 times and score 3 touchdowns? Like if you can, then I say, okay, you gave yourself a chance to win the game. So I think red zone offense for Miami, field position and not self-inflicted wounds that are going to set New England up on short fields, because the defense has a tendency to fold in on itself when you put them in that position repeatedly. And then I would say the last one is just your pre-snap operation, where Miami's offense under Mike McDaniel loves 3 shifts in a motion on 80% of their plays.
Yep.
You got a rookie quarterback in his 3rd start, first time on the road that he's getting a chance to start. What's your pre-snap operation and coordination look like to make sure everybody's lined up where they're supposed to be lined up? I'm not worried about, Quinn played in Michigan and at Alabama and won football games there. I'm not worried about him with the noise.
Right.
I'm worried about the overall operation of the Dolphins offense on the road, because like Tua had been in the offense for 4 years and we still have guys that are going to the wrong side of the formation. And you're going to pull a guy over here and we're breaking the huddle with 4 seconds and we're going to kill the motion. It's like, maybe do less. And do you do less in this game with Quinn Ewers? Does that help you do less? Like, I'm kind of intrigued to find out.
I'm glad you brought that up, because one of my 3 keys is defensive discipline for the Patriots, right? As you mentioned, Mike McDaniel loves playing those pre-snap games. Tons of motion, misdirection, different formations. He will move pockets with Quinn Ewers. Obviously, he tries to utilize the speed of the team, even with Tyreek Hill gone. So the Patriots defense has to be disciplined. They've got to be disciplined. They can't get fooled by the eye candy. They can't get out of position and mess things up and leave wide open running lanes and leaving open receivers in the secondary. So just make sure that you're disciplined. And especially when you tie that together with what we began with, can you focus on the game with all the distractions? And this week against this offense, you've got to be on the same page, and you've got to make sure that you know exactly what you're looking at and diagnose it correctly. So keep up with the defensive discipline from kickoff until the very end. The other thing I would say defensively is perimeter tackling. I mentioned last segment with you, Kyle, to me, Miami's bread and butter is when they get that run game going and they get Achane on the second level and they attack the edges. And Caleb Chason has had his own issues trying to defend the run this year. The linebackers without Robert Spillane, you've got to make sure that you got your fits correct. And you've got to make sure that, you don't get beat down by Alec Ingold or Julian Hill on those lead blocks. So make sure you swarm to the football, and you've got to wrap up. Devon Achane is number 1 in the entire NFL. This is to Patriots fans. I'm sure Dolphins fans know this, but he's number 1 in the NFL in yards after contact per attempt. So he's a guy that, he's elusive, he's tough to get down, and if he hits that second gear, then you're pretty much donezo. And if he runs for $180, even $150, you're in trouble. So tackle on the perimeter with him. Make sure you swarm to the football and wrap him up. And my final point would be, and this sounds kind of like low-hanging fruit and cliche, but it's just true, finish strong. And that's in every category. Ramondre Stevenson, Travion Henderson, when you run the football, finish your runs like you've been doing the last couple of weeks. Miami is 26th in the NFL in yards after contact per attempt. So that tells me their linebackers and their secondary, not the strongest tacklers out there, right? So, try to finish those runs strong. Make a 5-yard run into an 8-yard run. Win in the trenches. Kyle brought it up a couple times, the interior of the lines in that battle. Finish and win in the trenches. Play with intention and don't turn the football over. Take care of the ball. Miami feasted on Tampa's turnovers last week. I thought Baker Mayfield was awful last Sunday. And you just can't turn the football over. Don't make it easy. Do not make it easy on a rookie quarterback who's playing on the road for the first time in his NFL career. And as Kyle said, with a lot going on at the line of scrimmage, most likely, just play with that intention, play with purpose. Don't turn the ball over and make it easier for that young quarterback. And so we'll see what happens. Again, it's almost an impossible game to predict because it's week 18 and there's so much going on and there's so many unknowns.
Nick's over at Locked On Patriots. Kyle's over at Locked On Dolphins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Lions and Bears, man, what a year the Bears have had, and what a year the Lions have had, just not in a good way. Chicago in the best way is two NFC North rivals will face off here in week 18 with obviously one team gearing up for a big postseason run, hopefully, and the other one gearing up for the draft in the offseason. So Matt Derry of Locked On Lions and Lauren Cox of Locked On Bears talk about the game and what each team needs to do to win.
All right, as we wrap up our crossover Thursday, Locked On Bears, Locked On Lions podcast, I want to thank you for making Locked On Bears or Locked On Lions your first listen today, and hopefully every single day to start the 2026. There's a New Year's resolution for you. Tune in to Locked On Bears or Locked On Lions 5 days a week, every single week. Make us a part of your daily listening habit because we're breaking down these games for you. Even in week 18, we haven't been gone all season long. Looking at keys to victory for both of these teams. Obviously, Bears, I think, are 3-point favorites right now on FanDuel. Bears have a little bit more to play for here, we've talked about. But when you look at the Lions trying to bounce back and get one more win and sweep Ben Johnson, like what does that look like for them? What does a win for the Lions look like to undo this losing streak to end the year?
I'm going to say, Lauren, it's time to unlock David Montgomery again. I mean, you're playing week 18, 425, so you're going to get to a 325 Central. So I'd say second half is going to be dark. It's going to be almost like a night game at that point with the sun going down. Just pound the rock with Montgomery. And I get it. Jahmyr Gibbs is your guy, and he's tremendous in the open field. But a game like this, if they could somehow just unlock him again, where he can carry some bodies, take a 3-yard gain and turn it into a 6-yard gain, get the offensive line moving again, where they're moving bodies and pushing the pile back. It just hasn't been there. And Montgomery has kind of voiced his displeasure on Instagram. There's been some deleted posts. There's been some cryptic posts. What's his future looking like? He's going back to Chicago. He used to play for the Bears. He'd love to beat the Bears again at Soldier Field and have a day playing against his old team. No matter if there's bitterness there or not, everybody always wants to go back and show up their old team. So I'd like to see that first and foremost. I think that would be a big key. What about on your side? Because I know DeAndre Swift would love to beat the Lions again and run all over them. He kind of did that in the first game a little bit, despite the loss. There were some moments he had some open lanes.
Yeah, I mean, generally, the Bears have been running the ball really well, even, the last handful of games. It's been more a question of, like, how often they're actually handing it off. That Ben Johnson's been a little bit pass happy in some of these moments. And sometimes he's had to be, like, against the 49ers when the other team's scoring on every drive and you feel like, all right, we got to keep this rolling. Or when they're trailing to Green Bay in both of those games in the first half, and it's like, all right, we're behind on the scoreboard, so we can't take too long to just hand it off and run the ball. Like, it hasn't been a yards per carry issue. It's been a total number of carries question. And so I think on one hand, yeah, like if I'm drawing up my perfect Bears victory, right, it's you have Caleb Williams do as little as possible, right? Like, don't put him in harm's way at all. Like, run the ball 40 times in this game for 5 yards a carry and, win 17-13. Something like that I think would be an ideal kind of game of just slow it down, take it easy. It doesn't have to be this big show. And yet I feel like Ben Johnson's going to want to pull out a couple of things, just especially because I think the way the first game ended, but he wasn't like publicly like upset about the Lions running up at the end, but he's, he kind of like, hey, that's how they are. I respect it. Like, that's how it's going to be. So I feel like he's going to feel some amount of, well, I might pull out a trick play here and there, and I might take a few deep shots downfield here or there. And I don't think he wants to do the slow, boring, slugfest kind of beat you long and slow, but more like, no, I really want to smack you in the mouth with something special. And that's what I'm anticipating there. But I think they're also going to need a turnover or two from the Lions. Doesn't have to be a Goff interception necessarily, but like when the Bears get one or fewer turnovers, it's really hard for them to get off the field. Like, they need you to help their defense just a little bit. And they've been really good at attacking the ball in the air and being advantageous when the opportunities are there. They take advantage, but you do got to give them an inch so that they can take the mile. And if the Lions just take really good care of the football and don't give them that inch, I think it's going to be a lot easier going for the Lions offense. And then all of a sudden the Bears are trying to have to keep up in the scoring again.
We're 24 minutes into this thing and haven't really brought up Caleb Williams. And I've never been a huge believer. I think he's playing so well right now. And I've been impressed. And I think if the Lions want to have a chance to win this game, and it sounds like they're playing to win and playing their guys, they got to get off the field on third down. If there's get a couple of stops, it's 3rd and 9. You're forcing Caleb into a long situation on a third down. Get off the field. I mean, the Lion fans know this over the last month or so, just have not been able to get off the field on third down and even on some 4th down situations. And so some stops, force a punt or two. And look, I know how well Caleb's playing right now, especially with his legs and making some unbelievable throws on the run. I'm not ready to crown him MVP like Dave Kaplan, my buddy in Chicago, is, but man, he's playing so well, and you got to stop some of that stuff. And he's going to make his plays, and you guys got plenty of weapons. But getting off the field for that defense is going to be huge. It'll get demoralizing first half if the Bears are 4 for 4 their first 5 on third down. It'll be a long day.
And it's funny because it's kind of been like it's almost been the inverse of that for Chicago in the sense that like the Bears have not done a very good job on 1st and 2nd down, but they've been so good on 3rd downs, right? It's sort of this weird inverse of like the Lions need to be able to get off the field, and the Bears they keep putting themselves in these trickier situations where somehow they stay on the field, but it's 3rd and 13, and he finds a way to convert it and get it done. So like I think in a weird way, like the Bears need to do better on 1st and 2nd down, the Lions need to do better on 3rd down, and kind of they're kind of like inverse puzzle pieces here that fit in kind of. I don't know if that's really advantageous for either side, but kind of trying to figure out how they can kind of improve in this key factor in both directions here. But no, Caleb has been really dialed in, especially deep downfield. That's been one of the big differences this year. Is like he took plenty of deep shots last year, but it was always a little too far in front, a little too underthrown. Just couldn't quite dial it in and kind of pinpoint where that ball needs to be. But he's really feeling that right now, doing a better job of not taking sacks and throwing the ball away a lot, and just avoiding some of those negative plays as well. But certainly not far from perfect. It still has a lot of development to go, and he'll miss 4 or 5 throws a game that you're like, how do you that's an easy one. Like you got to be able to hit some of those, but he's been able to do enough of the really positive, really difficult downfield throws that more than make up for an easy check down that we one hopped to the running back when it's like, that doesn't cost you the game, but you're still like, how can you miss that one and make the miracle throw down the sideline? I mean, it's part of the roller coaster ride that we're really enjoying.
All right. So you said earlier 17-13, possibly Bears.
That's the ideal, I would say, but like I don't think the Bears defense can hold the Lions to 13. Like that would just be like the ideal. You control the clock well enough, but if I was trying to put numbers on it, I think this game will be close. I do think the Bears will win. I think even the Lions are trying hard, like subconsciously they know they're not fighting for anything, and I just think like there's a certain mentality thing that you're not even thinking about, but just in the back of your mind, why am I putting my body on the line for what? Revenge against Ben Johnson? Like how, if there's just that subtle sort of drawback there. So I would go like, 23-20 Bears is the kind of thing I'm thinking, or 24-21, something in that kind of range where the Lions offense, you'll feel a lot better about Goff and the Lions getting a little bit of a bounce back offensive performance. They'll run the ball better, I think, than they have the last few weeks, but it won't be quite enough to win the game, but you'll feel like, all right, the sky is not falling at the end of week 18.
Yeah, I'm with you. I kind of see a 24-19 win for the Gary Bears, and that's kind of where I'm going with this. So shout out to Kevin Warren, the genius.
Hey, leverage is leverage, man. The Chiefs just went across state lines, so Gary is right next to Chicago. All the flights still flying in Chicago. You can even be in the closest suburb across state lines is called East Chicago, Indiana. So they could be the East Chicago. They could still be the Chicago Bears in East Chicago, Indiana, and get all the government tax dollars they want from the state of Indiana instead of the state of Illinois.
The Bears have had such an amazing year. I mean, on the field, everything's rolling for them. And I just thought that maneuver by Warren a couple weeks ago was just a classic. But
yeah,
whatever.
You can find Lauren at Locked On Bears. You can find Matt over at Locked On Lions, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Commanders and Eagles. Eagles, well, they are the NFC East champions. Been a rough year for Philly. They will have an opportunity, though, to go to the postseason and make some noise potentially. Meanwhile, the Commanders, just a really rough year injury-wise, and they're preparing for their offseason here. So Lou DiBiase of Locked On Eagles and David Harrison of Locked On Commanders talk about what each team has to do to pick up a win in Week 18.
All right, final crossover Thursday of the regular season for Locked On Eagles and Locked On Commanders. David, if the Commanders do spoil the Eagles' chances of the 2 seed, and again, it's not just the Eagles don't control their destiny here with that number 2 spot in the NFC. They would also need the Chicago Bears to lose to the Lions. But if that happened, Detroit played upset and Philadelphia won, they would be the 2 seed. So if the Commanders are going to stop that from happening, what are the keys to victory on the Commanders' side to end the season on a high note?
Yeah, so I'm going to go one with the game itself, because really the overall victories for this game are going to come in the silver lining department, whether they win on the scoreboard or not. And that's just where we are with the Washington Commanders this season, right? So on the scoreboard, if they win the game, it's going to be because of their pass rush, because Tanner McKee, like you said, can't really move around as much. Drake Jackson, defensive end, former second-round pick of the San Francisco 49ers. Now he's here with Washington. He's been rehabbing injuries. He came close to sacking Jalen Hurts like 3 times a couple weeks ago. I talked to Drake about that since then. He was like, man, I could taste that first sack. And I mean, for him, going through everything he's gone through to come back on the NFL stage, get a sack, it would be such a great experience. And honestly, it doesn't really matter if it's Jalen Hurts or if it's Tanner McKee. The thing about it is, the reason he came close and didn't get him was because Jalen Hurts was running away from him every time he got close to him. Tanner McKee's not going to be able to do that. If they can get home on Tanner, cause some problems, then obviously every young quarterback, that is kind of the answer, is rattle him a little bit, see if you can do that. So that's the one for the game. But outside of that, man, just be competitive, because there's a lot of questions. Like, does Mikey Sanders still stay inside or go back inside or stay outside where he is right now? Quan Martin has had a rough couple of weeks. Like, obviously he got ejected from that game against the Eagles, but then he had the big blown coverage against Kevontae Turpin and the Dallas Cowboys that resulted in him being benched. Like, his future is up in the air. Jordan McGee, can he finish the season strong? And a lot of the players we talked about in these matchups, like, there's a lot of basically audition games happening for the Washington Commanders, and a lot of information that this team is going to use to make their decisions this offseason. So if they can be competitive, then like I said, it raises the floor a little bit for the roster depth that Adam Peters is dealing with, and just gives him a better platform to launch into the offseason.
Yeah, absolutely. I think on the Eagles side of things, and again, this game is important, and they do have a chance to get that number 2 seed, which I think is really valuable in the playoffs. I think 3 keys to victory on the field. On offense, I mentioned it a little bit earlier, with Tanner McKee, he's very comfortable with under center play action, and that's been something that I think the Eagles have found. You know, they've been searching for an identity this year on offense, any sort of consistency, just finding a couple things they do really well that they can tap into when they need to move the football. And I think, again, you got to add context to who the opponents were. But when you look at actually that Chargers loss is where things started, and then the Raiders game, the first Commanders game in D.C., the under center run and play action passing game did start to work. And I think that's what got them back on track after that 3-game losing streak. Tanner McKee is very comfortable in that way. So that's something I want to see on the offensive side of the football. Playoff Tank Bigsby. I think that's something, if they establish early on, could get Tanner moving. And then I think you should feature Bigsby and Dotson on the offensive side of the football. Darius Cooper, who was an undrafted rookie this year, has been a good contributor as well. Britton Covey is going to be an interesting slot player here in this game, a very explosive punt returner that will now be on the offensive side of the football. But to me, feature Bigsby and Dotson. I think they've been 2 of your better role players that don't get their number called often because of, you know, target monsters like A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, and Saquon Barkley. But I think they're going to show Sunday that they could go to another team, maybe next year even, Dotson's a free agent, and have a bigger role on offense. And then my final thing is just tackling in the open field. I think you look at some of the Eagles' backup defensive backs that had an opportunity where higher draft picks, David, that could have been potential future starters that kind of played their way out of the lineup or out of that opportunity. A big reason was tackling. You look at Keely Ringo at cornerback and Sidney Brown at safety. Both of them this year got legitimate opportunities to start after Drew Makuba went down at safety. There's been just this musical chairs at that third cornerback spot opposite Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean. Ringo and Brown sometimes can be a liability in the open field. So I think tackling is going to be a big problem or a big thing to watch that could decide this game too.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And of course, it's incentives week, right? Like this is the final week of the regular season. The guys go get incentives. Bobby Wagner is 7 tackles from becoming the 3rd linebacker in NFL history to have 2,000 tackles, 7 tackles and half a sack for becoming the 2nd linebacker in history behind only Ray Lewis, or with only Ray Lewis, I should say, to have 2,000 tackles and 40 sacks. So I'm interested to see, like, I was talking to another media member about this today. Yeah. If I'm Dan Quinn, I'm blitzing, I'm rushing Bobby Wagner every snap until he gets at least half a sack.
Yeah, I agree.
And just do it. You know what I mean? Like, let's just get this thing done. So it's also incentives week. So still some things to look at for that too.
David's over at Locked On Commanders. Louis over at Locked On Eagles, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And crazy to say, the Chiefs are not in this conversation for the postseason whatsoever. They'll play the Raiders in week 18, with nothing on the line for either team, which is actually kind of unbelievable to kind of say that the Chiefs aren't in the playoff picture. So be sure to go check out Locked On Chiefs and Locked On Raiders for all the information leading up to that game as well. But it's for all the marbles here. Sunday Night Football, Ravens and Steelers. Winner goes on to the playoffs as the winner of the AFC North and hosts a playoff game. Loser, they're going home. Chris Carter of Locked On Steelers and myself, Kevin Ostreicher of Locked On Ravens, talk about what each team needs to do to pick up the biggest win of their seasons.
We're back here on Crossover Thursday here on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm Chris Carter of Locked On Steelers. He's Kevin Ostreicher of Locked On Ravens. We continue our episode here. Kevin, I pointed this out earlier in the week, and it's something weird that I noticed earlier when these two teams played. There's a lot of similarities between these teams, and not just like in like the fact that they have longtime coaches and they're respectable organizations, but even in the stats that they allow. When I looked at offensive EPA per play, the Steelers get their EPA per play on offense is 0.02. The Ravens is 0.02. Defensive EPA per play, Steelers is 0.01. Ravens is 0.01. Yards per play allowed on defense, Steelers 5.4 yards per play allowed. Ravens 5.5. Passing yards per game allowed, 245.3 for the Steelers, 245.3 for the Ravens. And even rushing yards per carry allowed. Steelers allow 4.2 yards per carry. Ravens allow 4.2 yards per carry. There's so many similarities to how these teams play right now. It's kind of crazy. And despite the different things that they're doing organizationally wise, the Steelers have old Aaron Rodgers. They're kind of waiting for their chance to take their next shot at a franchise quarterback. The Ravens have their guy in Lamar Jackson. I want to talk about this defense, though. Where is this Ravens defense now as far as how it's developed this year, what you've seen? They rank 18th in scoring. They're like 29th against the pass. But where have you seen them either improve or fall off this year as far as what's to be expected here?
Yeah, well, I think I'll start by saying it is a much better unit than it was early in the season, and the bar was on the floor for that, so it wasn't very hard to be better. But they've actually quietly turned themselves into a really good conversion defense, where, again, early in the season, all those numbers were 30, 31, 32, like 30, whatever it may be. Right now, Baltimore is the 5th best red zone defense in the NFL, 50.8% conversion percentage. They're also the 9th best third down defense in the NFL, at 36.4, and they've actually turned their run defense around like complete 180. They are the 11th best rush defense in the league now, which again, from where they were in the first month and a half of the season, is a miraculous turnaround. And the first time these two teams played, the Steelers only averaged 2 yards a carry, 17 carries for 34 yards. And I think, again, the Steelers are a better running team than that. I think Kenneth Gainwell and Jalen Warren are better than that, but it just kind of goes to show that they've really kind of hit their stride over this last month or two with that run defense. The problem for them is their pass rush is still far too inconsistent. And luckily for the Steelers, the Ravens do not have Myles Garrett on their roster. So that's going to be big for Pittsburgh. But Baltimore just needs to get consistent pressure. That's one of my huge keys to the game, because we saw like the pressure with Aaron Rodgers that he was facing without DK Metcalf, which is he's not going to be available for this game as well. It forced him to make some tough decisions and get the ball out and take some sacks, not by Myles Garrett, but from other players of the Browns team. So that pass rush with guys like Mike Green and Kyle Van Noy, Tavius Robinson, Draymond Jones, who they acquired at the deadline, and they have Travis Jones on the interior. They're missing Nnamdi Madubuike a lot, who's been out since week 2. But that pass rush needs to step up against the Steelers' offensive line, and their pass defense also has been suspect. They play a lot of off coverage and give cushion, and that's kind of the identity of their defense, where they are not going to give you the deep stuff, at least not going to try to. They've actually done a not so great job of allowing that over the last handful of weeks. But their third down defense, which I mentioned was turning around, they gave up like 3rd and 18 to the Packers and 3rd and 9 to the Packers, a lot of 3rd and long. So they have to be better in those situations. Kyle Hamilton, though, is still the unicorn of that defense, a Swiss Army knife. He is everywhere. He's been incredible again this season. They also sometimes struggle with missing tackles. So honestly, I don't know what to expect from this defense, but I do know the Steelers having DK Metcalf out, who accounted for 148 yards of Pittsburgh's offense in the first matchup, that does favor Baltimore.
Another thing I found in how close these teams were, the Ravens rank 11th in rushing yards per game allowed. The Steelers rank 12th. The Ravens rank 5th in the NFL in red zone touchdown percentage allowed. The Steelers rank 6th. Like they're so close in a lot of these perspectives. The one thing that I think the Steelers have on the Ravens in spades is that they are one of the better sack producing teams in the NFL. Even when TJ Watt hasn't been playing, Alex Highsmith has been really bringing it. The Steelers rank 7th in sacks per game right now. The Ravens rank 30th in the NFL in that regard. I think that is going to be a big factor in this game. The Ravens have to find a way to make Aaron Rodgers uncomfortable, he already gets the ball out quickly, Kevin, but what the Browns were able to do, and again, the Steelers did what they always do against Myles Garrett. People were like, "Oh, that's why they lost the game, was they focused too much on him." That's ridiculous. They also didn't allow any sacks when they beat up on them 23-9 earlier this season. So, in fact, Myles Garrett's played the Steelers twice and not gotten any sacks this year. But where I think that the things were, Aaron Rodgers' clock is knowingly sped up a little bit. And it's like, okay, we have to handle things a little bit more carefully here because we can't let that guy wreck the game. And it's about, hey, can I make better decisions? We saw Aaron Rodgers start to look really comfortable when he was playing the Ravens. Even when Mike Green, I couldn't believe it when I saw this on TV, when Mike Green had a clean shot at him and he just ducked under it. And I was like, Aaron Rodgers is not supposed to be doing that anymore, man. And in that game, he had 284 passing yards. Now, again, to your point, no DK Metcalf. And out of the 284, 148 went to Metcalf in that game. And that's going to be a big factor. Can the Steelers find other ways to move the ball? It looks like Calvin Austin will be back for this game. So they'll at least have the guy who's typically been their number 2 this year back on the receiving time. But I think the guy that the Ravens really should watch out for this week is Pat Freiermuth. Darnell Washington's also been put on injured reserve, so he's not going to be available most likely if the Steelers somehow make the Super Bowl. That would be the only chance of him even coming back to play. But Pat Freiermuth has been a better blocker this year. This is the best version of a blocking Pat Freiermuth I've seen in his career. And he's been getting open quite a bit. And Steelers listeners and viewers on this show right now are know that I've been banging the table for months. Get this guy the football because he gets open. And in this Browns game, whenever they got him the ball, it was like a 20-yard completion, and it was a big gain, and they moved the chains and got them in scoring position. When they didn't get him the ball, it was Marquez Valdes-Scantling not being able to win. And so, to me, Kevin, this is going to be interesting to see how do the Ravens try to play the Steelers. Do they try to overload the box, not let them run? They shut down the run game the last time these two teams played. Or do they say, hey, we're going to try to make sure that Pat Freiermuth and these guys don't get off, and that it is just a really hard day for Aaron Rodgers and a passing attack that's missing his top receiver.
Yeah, it's going to be a huge turning point in this game because if you allow Aaron Rodgers to get into that rhythm again and again, I mean, we're in 2025 in that game. Aaron Rodgers was looking like 2015 Aaron Rodgers in that, was running, was running for touchdowns. I'm like, what are we doing here? This is not what should be happening. So I think that Baltimore's corners have talents. Marlon Humphrey's talented. Nate Wiggins is talented. Nate Wiggins had a terrible game against Green Bay. Marlon Humphrey's been up and down all year. Chidobe Awuzie actually has been exceptional for them. So he's a guy that, you're probably going to put on the Steelers' best too, is probably Calvin Austin at this point if he does return. So if Baltimore's able to shut down that Steelers run game like I talked about, I think that it will be much easier for them to just kind of pin their ears back from a pass rushing perspective and get to Aaron Rodgers. But it's going to come down to the red zone to me. Even though I think we're going to see some field goals in this game, I'm pretty sure the loser of this game is going to look back on their red zone possessions and say, man, what if we just scored and got those 4 extra points on this possession? Or what if we were able to punch the ball in the end zone here? And I think whatever team is able to execute better there, and just for the record, Baltimore's red zone offense, who has been very poor. It was great last week because of Derrick Henry, but they've been a very poor red zone offense. They're 29th in the NFL. Pittsburgh's red zone defense is 6th. So I'm really intrigued to see that matchup too.
It is going to be a big matchup. And on the flip side, the Steelers rank 14th in red zone offense. Ravens defense ranks 5th. So that'll also be a big matchup. And hey, I think they played a factor in the last game. The Ravens got 6 red zone possessions and only 2 touchdowns out of them. And that's when you lose by 5, that's the stuff that you end up kicking yourself over. So I'm right with you that's going to be a big thing. The big thing is I think the Steelers need to do. They don't need to dominate the run game the way but they need to not let what happened last game happen this time. Because again, DK Metcalf made up for a lot with 148 receiving yards, but the Ravens outrushed the Steelers 217-34. If that happens this time around, I don't think the Steelers pull it out because they won't have DK Metcalf torching up the Ravens secondary to make up for it. The Steelers need to at least make that break even and then find other ways to win this game. And that's going to include, I think, if TJ Watt is healthy enough to play, he was a limited participant in practice officially, but we're getting the vibes that the Steelers have been saying for a while now that he's going to be ready to play before the end of the regular season. And this is it. This is for all the marbles. I get a sense that TJ Watt is going to play in this game. And I don't think it's going to be like he plays 5 to 10 snaps. I think he's going to be able to play a good bit. And if he does, they'll have their full gamut of edge rushers back with Alex Highsmith, who's playing at a very high level. I think he has 7 sacks in his last 9 games or something like that. And Nick Herbig has been playing really well this year, and even rookie Jack Sawyer's been playing well. And so now they'll have their quartet of edge rushers available, and that's what they'll want to try to shut down the option run of Lamar and Derek or Snoop and Derek or whoever plays, and also bring the heat when they force those third and longs, keep Lamar Jackson contained, and get him down when you get the chance to create turnover plays. I think a lot of this comes down to whichever defense can create some splash plays on their own, it's going to flip the game in the other way. So for the Steelers, I think contain the run game, mitigate it. Don't let yourself be outrushed by too much. Make sure that Derrick Henry can't break the game open, and then make this game be about your strengths, which maybe it can be a run game with Jalen Warren and Kenneth Gainwell. Maybe it's Aaron Rodgers just seeing the field and distributing the football. Maybe it's your pass rush taking over, but make it about your things. Keep it the game on your turf, and don't let it get to the Ravens, which when they're running the ball, they're very hard to stop.
Yeah, Ravens run game. Feed Derrick Henry. Don't get away from it. That's been a problem for them of getting too cute and not. I think there's at least like one possession every game, Chris. I think the Ravens just forget they have Derrick Henry, and that luckily did not happen in this Packers game last week. But you need to be able to run this football. Lamar, if he does play, and it's looking like that'll happen, he also can do his Superman thing. But again, you don't want to continue to put too much on his plate where he can do it. But depending on how banged up he actually is, I think it makes a lot of sense to kind of make Derrick Henry the focal point here. And then depending on how banged up Lamar is, kind of let him do his thing, but maybe in a secondary role, which is not what we've said here in Baltimore for Lamar's career. It's been like Lamar do everything, but adding Derrick Henry gives you the option, if you need to take some off of Lamar's plate. And honestly, Lamar deserves to, have some stuff taken off his plate, considering how much he has carried this team over the last handful of years. You can find me over at Locked On Ravens. You can find Chris over at Locked On Steelers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. That's all I have for you here today on the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show. Thank you so much for tuning in. On the way out, be sure to hit the like and subscribe button in video form, and follow along and subscribe in audio form for 5 days a week plus more of daily Ravens coverage coming up. We're going to continue to do this through the playoffs. We're going to have a nice little wild card weekend to dive into next week. Playoffs are almost here. Stay tuned, and we'll see you right back here soon on the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show.